Chapter 271 E-Guild Residence. Lady Charlene is looking for me? A bad premonition stirred in Shifeng's mind. Shifeng had a very good understanding of Charlene's personality. She was definitely the type of person that would not act out of altruism, and Shifeng couldn't help but wonder just which item on him Charlene had her eye on again. Forget it. It's better if I just go and see what she has in store for me, Shifeng decided after giving it some thought. Although Charlene was a money grubber, he had always received a great harvest every time they met. This time Charlene might give him some advanced quest again. If the quest rewards were good, he would consider giving it a try. However, the stargazing tower was located in Blackwing City, and this situation puzzled Shifeng greatly. Since when had Charlene run all the way to Blackwing City? If Shifeng had not known the location of the stargazing tower, he would have definitely wasted much of his time blindly searching for Charlene in White River City. Moreover, it was not easy to go to Blackwing City. Without the appropriate pass, players would find it impossible to go there at all. To put it simply, if any other player wished to meet with Charlene, it would be a very difficult endeavor. Fortunately, it was a simple task for Shifeng. Although he had already depleted the number of uses on the 7 Luminaries gemstone, his pass to Blackwing City, Aqua Rose still had a few Blackwing passes of her own. On second thought, maybe I should postpone meeting up with Charlene. Based on Shifeng's many years of experience campaigning in God's domain, the quest that he could trigger by going to Blackwing City would definitely not be simple. He also had many things he needed to do right now, so it was better for him to just push this matter to a later time. After leaving the city hall, Shifeng called for Aqua Rose and Fire Dance to meet up with him. They then headed towards the Purple Sun Mansion located in the trade area of White River City. The Purple Sun Mansion was originally the official residence of a count. However, this count had mysteriously disappeared inside the Purple Sun Mansion over half a century ago. In the following decades, every new owner of the residence would also mysteriously disappear overnight. An answer was never found for their disappearance, and ultimately the residence was sealed by the city more than a decade ago. Moreover, the city had even stationed guards in front of the residence, preventing anyone from entering the place. It went without saying that the area the Purple Sun Mansion occupied, as the official residence of a count, was one of the largest within the trade area of White River City. Even though Shifeng was now a viscount, the personal land he could purchase would be less than a third of the Purple Sun Mansion. Guild leader, why did you bring us to this abandoned residence? Aqua Rose asked in curiosity as she looked at the dilapidated residence in the distance, and also at the 8 guards stationed outside the place. Their guild had just recently obtained the first clear of the Hell Mode Demon's Castle, and the resulting fame had attracted many players to apply to join the guild right now. As a result, Aqua Rose was swamped with work. Although Blackie was also helping out with management, he was mainly focused on managing the workshop side of things. The guild within the game, on the other hand, was left to Aqua Rose to manage. As for Fire Dance, she was responsible for leading the main force of the guild. Each of them had their own respective duties. However, the management of the guild was the most onerous task out of the 3. Zero Wing had been established only recently, so there were still many problems on the management side of things. Aside from the guild perk system still being imperfect, their guild was also not prepared to recruit so many players. Therefore, Aqua Rose could only carefully select whom to allow into the guild. Meanwhile, her criteria for selection were not based on a player's level. Instead, she chose players based on how skilled they were in battle, and such strict selection criteria were very laborious and time-consuming. Aside from recruitment affairs, Aqua Rose also had to manage the daily affairs of the guild, and this, in turn, had made Aqua Rose a very busy woman. If Shifeng had not called her over, most likely she would still be occupied with the matter of recruitment right now. What do you think of this residence? Shifeng asked, a smile on his face. What do I think of it? Aqua Rose carefully scrutinized the Purple Sun Mansion. Although it was currently daytime in God's domain, with the sun shining brightly up in the sky, the Purple Sun Mansion was surrounded by a depressing atmosphere. It even gave others an eerie feeling. However, this residence occupied a very large plot of land, and it was also situated in the heart of White River City. It was definitely prime real estate. Although it looks shabby, its location is very strategic. Both the bank and auction house are only 2 streets to the west, while the Adventurers Association is 3 streets to the east. There are only 5 such strategic locations throughout White River City, and 4 are already owned by major nobles. Only this place is left without an owner. Moreover, out of the 5 residences, the Purple Sun Mansion occupies the largest area. Unfortunately, it is not for sale and it is also protected by guards. If a guild can establish a guild residence here, it would be very beneficial towards the guild's development in the future. Aqua Rose replied with eloquence. She was extremely familiar with the real estate of White River City. Her eyes were filled with yearning when she looked at this dilapidated residence. However, since they could not obtain it, there was not much point in talking about it. Not to mention owning private territory within the trade area, they did not have the power to purchase land in even the outermost sectors of the city right now. Indeed, within White River City, the Purple Sun Mansion could be considered the best location to establish a guild residence. Shifeng nodded his head in agreement. He then said with a soft chuckle, "However, from today onwards, this Purple Sun Mansion belongs to us, Zero Wing." After Shifeng finished speaking, both Aqua Rose and Fire Dance were instantly dumbfounded. They looked at Shifeng with eyes filled with disbelief. "Guild leader, what did you say?" Aqua Rose couldn't believe the words she just heard. This prime real estate belonged to Zero Wing from now on. No matter how she thought about this matter, it was simply impossible for it to be true. "This Purple Sun Mansion will be Zero Wing's guild residence from now on," Shifeng said with a smile. Guild leader, stop joking around. For such prime real estate, not to mention now, even if another month passed by, it would still be impossible for anyone to obtain it. Aqua Rose had a clear understanding about guild residences. Currently, not a single guild in White River City possessed a guild residence of their own. Yet, Shifeng was saying that this hot property was now under the ownership of Zero Wing? If what Shifeng said was indeed true, then it would be even more shocking than Zero Wing obtaining the first clear of one of the 3 great dungeons right this instant. It was simply unbelievable. "I knew you wouldn't believe me, which is why I brought you over to take a look." Shifeng shook his head and laughed. If Zero Wing wished to develop rapidly, a guild residence was a must. Meanwhile, Aqua Rose was the manager of the guild, so Shifeng naturally had to bring her over to take a look at their future guild residence. It would allow Aqua Rose to better plan for the future. After all, it was one thing to obtain the land for the guild residence. Actually establishing it was an entirely different matter. It would be better for them to plan ahead. Just as the 3 of them arrived in front of the steel gate of the Purple Sun Mansion, the captain of the station guards walked up to them, blocking their paths. "This is a forbidden location of White River City. Those unrelated, please leave," the guard captain berated. "Don't tell me even I am not allowed entry?" Shifeng revealed his title of Viscount. "So it is Lord Viscount. Forgive this humble one for not recognizing my lord. However, Magistrate Weissman has personally given orders that nobody is allowed entry into this place, and even if it is you, Lord Viscount, I am afraid that I cannot allow you to enter." The guard captain suddenly grew respectful when speaking to Shifeng. "What about this?" Shifeng took out the Blacksteel's contract this time. The guard captain was shocked after seeing this piece of paper. After all, this paper was the deed to the Purple Sun Mansion. In other words, from this moment onwards, the Purple Sun Mansion was the private territory of the Viscount before him. Since Lord Viscount has already become the owner of this place, of course this humble one would not stop my lord from entering, the guard captain said carefully. He then added, "However, there is something very strange about this Purple Sun Mansion. If my lord is planning to enter, please exercise caution." "I understand." Shifeng nodded in reply. Following which, the 8 guards moved away from the entrance, allowing the 3 of them entry into the residence. Meanwhile, both Aqua Rose and Fire Dance were shocked by Shifeng's revelation. He was actually a Viscount of White River City. Nobility was unlike levels. One could not get ennobled simply by wishing for it. Instead, one needed a large amount of reputation to do so. Currently, all the guilds in White River City were busy trying to raise the White River City reputation they had. Although there were already players who had become citizens, there had yet to be a single person who achieved nobility even until now. Meanwhile, nobility could be categorized into 5 tiers, which were Duke, Marquis, Count, Viscount, and Baron. Just the difficulty of becoming a Baron had made all the guilds in White River City lament over their powerlessness, not to mention obtaining the position of Viscount, which was 1 tier above Baron. Chapter 272, Spirited Away. Based on Aqua Rose's knowledge about the authority of barons, aside from being able to purchase private territory within White River City, they could also hire their own guards. A baron could hire a total of 10 NPCs to serve as guards for his own territory. However, a baron was the lowest rank of nobility. Only when one was promoted to viscount would one be counted as one of the true nobles of the city. A viscount could not only purchase private territory, one could recruit up to 40 NPCs as guards, as well as have 2 personal guards. Having personal guards was a special privilege available only to true nobles. The normal guards hired by players were not capable of growth, unlike personal guards. In other words, after recruitment, the levels of normal guards would not change no matter how much time passed. On the other hand, personal guards could be leveled up. They would also receive bonus attributes from leveling up, making them much stronger than normal guards. The difference between the two was like the difference between a common monster and a boss monster. Meanwhile, if their guild had these personal guards protecting their guild residents at this stage of the game, the defense of their guild residents would definitely be foolproof. Furthermore, they could even have these personal guards participate in boss battles. Although the levels of these NPCs would be suppressed, they would still be a lot stronger than the average player. With these personal guards, Zero Wing would have a greater advantage over other guilds when contesting for field bosses. Thinking up to this point, Aqua Rose couldn't help but re-evaluate her opinion of Shi Feng once again. Guild leader, the more I get to know you, the less I actually understand about you. Not only have you managed to obtain such an excellent location for a guild residence, you are also a viscount of White River City. If other guilds were to find out about this matter, they would definitely go insane, Aqua Rose giggled, blinking her shining large eyes. Indeed, they will definitely hunt me down like maniacs, Shi Feng laughed. The moment a guild possessed their own residence, they would be like a seedling that had finally set down roots. They would no longer be at the mercy of the winds and rain. Only by growing roots could a plant thrive and have the possibility to grow into a towering tree. In the past, a player had once joked that a guild without their own guild residence was like a gang of mountain bandits, while a guild that had their own guild residence was like the lord of a region. The reason being, only with a guild residence could a guild gradually perfect the many benefits they provided. It was especially true for guild quests. At this stage of the game, as nobody possessed their own guild residence yet, the NPCs within the city were unable to privately publish quests to the guilds. Hence, players could only accept some daily quests from the Adventurers Association to earn guild reputation. In comparison to the individual quests that players receive from the Adventurers Association, the private guild quests published by NPCs rewarded much higher guild reputation. If a guild was sufficiently powerful, there was even the possibility that a quest rewarding an epic ranked item would appear. Moreover, unlike at the Adventurers Association, the number of quests available to guild members was not just limited to 2 or 3. As long as a guild was sufficiently powerful, there would be several hundreds, even thousands of guild quests being published in the guild residence every day. With so many quests available, players would be able to level up and upgrade their equipment more efficiently than if they were limited to grinding monsters. Also, statistical analysis made by professionals in the past showed that guilds with guild residences made at least double, or even triple, the amount of money of guilds without guild residences. Moreover, only with a guild residence would a guild officially have a stable source of income. The reason being, whenever a guild member completed a guild quest, the guild would automatically collect 15% of the quest reward as processing fee. The fees collected would then be stored inside the guild bank to serve as funding for the guild. This was the reason why guild residences were so important. The location of the guild residence was also very important as this correlated to the number of guild quests a guild would receive. A newly established guild residence would be an unknown existence in White River City. To be precise, it would be unknown to the NPCs of White River City, and that anonymity would prevent many of these NPCs from commissioning quests with such newly established guild residences. If, however, a guild residence was established in a high-traffic location like the trade area, it would be easily noticed by NPCs. As a result, the number of quests the guild residence received would increase. Meanwhile, as the number of quests resolved by the guild increased, the fame of the guild among NPCs would also rise. And the number of NPCs willing to commission quests would also increase in turn. Such a snowball-like development speed would be unstoppable once it started. Hence, if the guilds in White River City were to find out about Zero Wing coming into possession of a guild residence, they would definitely hate Shi Feng down to the bone. Fortunately, Zero Wing had already grown past the stage of a fledgling guild. Unrated guilds would not dare to make an enemy out of Zero Wing. Only third-rate guilds or above would pose a threat. However, once Zero Wing officially establishes its guild residence, not even third-rate guilds would dare to become its enemies. While Shi Feng and Aqua Rose were having their merry discussion, the three of them arrived inside the main building of the Purple Sun Mansion. After remaining vacant for over a decade, the interior of the mansion was fully covered in a layer of dust. Weeds could even be seen growing in certain locations inside the mansion. The interior of the building looked extremely dilapidated, as if it could collapse at any moment. Not to mention people, even rats would not want to live in this place. It seems this place needs to be completely demolished and rebuilt, Shi Feng said in heartache as he swept a glance at the interior of the mansion. 4 privately owned territories, any expenditures spent on it had to come out from the owner's own pockets. However, not to mention building a guild hall meant for an entire guild, even the cost of building an ordinary house was insanely expensive. It was a price that no normal person could afford. Only a large guild with immense wealth could afford such a price. Guild leader, you are the wealthiest player in White River City, yet you're actually crying about being poor? Aqua Rose rolled her eyes at Shi Feng. She knew for a fact that Shi Feng had spent over 100 gold coins without even blinking when he bought the Arclight shield forging design. Shi Feng could only shake his head and bitterly smile in reply to Aqua Rose's teasing. What Aqua Rose did not know was that a fee of 200 gold coins was required in order to construct even the most common guild hall. Meanwhile, such a guild hall only had a capacity of 500 players. If it were a guild hall with a capacity of 1,000 players, the construction fee would be 500 gold coins. With the area the Purple Sun Mansion occupied, Shi Feng could build an advanced guild hall with a capacity of 3,000 players at the very least. However, the price tag for an advanced guild hall was 3,000 gold coins. 3,000 gold was an astronomical sum for any one guild. Even though Shi Feng indeed had the ability to construct an advanced guild hall, he still had the burden of 30,000 gold from the Gospel Project quest bearing down on him. He dared not randomly spend his money. The only reason he had spent over 100 gold for the Arclight shield forging design was because he was confident of earning back the money through sales of the shields he produced. In the case of the guild hall, however, it was a one-way expenditure. Just as Shi Feng's group arrived at a flight of stairs, Shi Feng suddenly felt a gust of cold wind blowing over his face. He could also hear an indistinct voice whispering by his ears, as if calling him to descend the stairs. Instantly, Shi Feng felt all the hairs on his body stand up. Without hesitation, Shi Feng immediately unsheathed the abyssal blade and the demon bane, raising his 5 senses to their very limits. In this moment he was fully prepared for any enemies that would show up. Aqua Rose and Fire Dance, on the other hand, reacted a tad slower than Shi Feng. However, they too promptly readied their weapons as they fixed their gazes at the staircase. Contrary to their expectations, however, nothing appeared from the staircase. Only a cold breeze blew up from below, causing the weeds within the mansion to quiver slightly. How can there be wind coming from inside the building? Fire Dance asked, feeling there was something very strange about the situation. The virtual world of God's domain closely resembled reality. Meanwhile, their current location was the heart of the mansion. It was an enclosed space, so it should have been impossible for any wind to be present. Likewise, Shi Feng also felt this matter was strange. However, according to Shi Feng's knowledge, there was indeed something very strange about this Purple Sun Mansion. After all, it was a fact that every previous owner of the mansion had disappeared without a trace while staying inside the building. It was due to these disappearances that the inhabitants of White River City had nicknamed the building the Ghost Mansion. Even the Tier 4 wizard Weissman could not find the reason for the past owner's disappearances. The only solution he had was to send out a team of guards to prevent anyone from entering the mansion. Shi Feng also had not learned anything about the Purple Sun Mansion in his past life. Hence, he could only rely on himself to resolve this matter. Only, he never expected to feel such a great pressure just by standing at the entrance of the staircase. It felt as if he was standing in front of a ferocious beast. Moreover, this kind of pressure had a sense of familiarity. However, Shi Feng could not recall where he had felt this pressure before. The cold wind seems to be coming from the basement. Let's go have a look at it for now. Shi Feng shook his head. He decided to first discover the source of this mysterious wind before making any further decisions. Chapter 273, Forgotten Lands. After entering the basement of the Purple Sun Mansion, Shi Feng took a look around, finding nothing special about the place. The entire room was empty. There was none of the cold wind from before, neither was there the oppressive feeling that could shock even one's soul. There's nothing here? Were my senses playing tricks on me? When Fire Dance discovered no monsters in the basement, she promptly put away her daggers, sheathing the weapons back into their scabbards. I don't know, but it is indeed true that there is no danger here, Shifeng said, shaking his head. As players experienced more and more battles in God's domain, their sensitivity towards danger would also gradually improve. It was especially true for an expert of God's domain. Moreover, this ability of players to perceive danger was usually not wrong. Let's take a closer look around, Shifeng said. If they could not resolve this mysterious situation whereby the mansion's inhabitants were spirited away, should something actually happen, it would be a tragedy if the incident scared away the NPCs that came to commission quests with the guild. If players were the ones to get caught up in this mystery, they would at worst die once, losing a level and some skill proficiency. However, it would be different if an NPC were to get entangled in this matter. If they died, then it would be a true death for them. The main god system would not revive them. Hence, it was imperative for Shifeng to resolve this mystery as soon as possible. Otherwise, this prime real estate would be worthless. After the trio searched for more than 10 minutes, they found no problems with the place. Not to mention a monster, they couldn't even find a mouse in this place. However, Shifeng did not think that the enormous pressure he felt before was an illusion, especially since he had also felt this pressure previously in his past life. It was just that he could not recall when he had felt it exactly. After searching for a long time and getting no results, Shifeng's group had no other choice but to return upstairs. What's going on here? The moment the group arrived upstairs, Aqua Rose immediately called out in shock when she saw the scene before her. Aqua Rose wasn't the only person who was shocked. Even Shifeng was taken aback by what he saw. They had simply returned to the hall on the first floor, yet the scene here was completely different from before. No longer was it the empty, dilapidated hall they had seen. Instead, the sight that greeted the three after they exited the staircase was an intricate labyrinthine corridor. It was as if they had arrived at an entirely different place. It was definitely not the former Purple Sun mansion they had been in. At this moment, a notification sounded from the system. System, players have discovered the Forgotten Lands. All communications to the outside world are temporarily disabled. So it turns out to be something like this. Shifeng suddenly came to a realization. He finally knew why the previous owners of the mansion had all disappeared one after another. It turned out that all of them had been transported to this location. Guild leader, I can't use my return scroll, Fire Dance said, her eyebrows wrinkled. This is just like the time in the trial of God. It seems that this place isn't ordinary at all. Shifeng began observing his surroundings. Shifeng had encountered numerous such situations in his previous life. It was just like the lost lands he had encountered shortly after entering God's domain in this life. He had even obtained the abyssal blade from that place. Although the Forgotten Lands was different from the Lost Lands, both still had their similarities. Most likely, players trapped in this place would be released after they completed a certain quest. In any case, they had not met with any dangers so far, and it would be much more efficient if they explored the map separately. Unwittingly, a day passed by without anything happening. Only on the second day did Aqua Rose find something new in the region she explored. Aqua Rose discovered a large magic array. According to the speculations of Shifeng and an elementalist like Aqua Rose, it should be a magic array that was tier 5 or above. However, as to what this magic array was used for, not even Shifeng with his bountiful experience could guess. Unless there was a tier 5 wizard or a tier 6 mage god before them. Following which, after spending the rest of the day exploring the place, Fire Dance discovered a second magic array that looked exactly the same as the first one. Other than this discovery, the trio found nothing else. They did not find even a single monster throughout their exploration, nor did they receive any quest notifications. Aqua Rose entertained the thought of simply giving up on this pointless endeavor. It would be more worthwhile for her to just kill herself and return to the city. In this godforsaken place they could not level up, neither was there any quest for them to complete. They were simply wasting their time by staying here. Moreover, she was the manager of the guild. She still had many things she needed to do. How could she afford to waste so much precious time in this place? Moreover, there was still the matter of the guild residence. However, Shifeng discouraged Aqua Rose from taking such an action. The reason being, there was no guarantee she could return to the city even if she killed herself. In the event that she could not return, she would have lost a level for nothing. Listening to Shifeng's words, Aqua Rose had no choice but to give up on this idea of hers as she continued exploring this Forgotten Lands. When the third day arrived, after exploring a majority of the Forgotten Lands, the group discovered 3 more magic arrays. In total, they had discovered 5 of such Tier 5 magic arrays. Soon after, the 3 of them met up and shared their map information with each other. The moment their map information sharing was completed, a notification sounded from the system. System: Unique Quest Miracles Unsealed, activated. Quest details: remove the seal on the Forgotten Lands. Quest rewards: unknown. Remove the seal on the Forgotten Lands? The quest doesn't even tell us how to do so. What are we even supposed to do here? Fire Dance glared at the notification screen in anger. They had been exploring this place for 3 days now, yet the only thing they got in return was this quest that provided them with no hints at all. The game was simply too despicable. It should be around here, Shifeng said, pointing on the map. To be precise, he was pointing at an area central to the 5 magic arrays. Magic arrays require mana to operate, and normally use mana crystals as a source for mana. However, although the magic arrays were functioning properly when we discovered them, there was no sign of any mana crystals on site powering them. Moreover, these 5 magic arrays seem to be an integrated structure, so there should be a place where they draw their mana from. We've already explored the outskirts of the Forgotten Lands, and the only area we have yet to explore is the central region. There is a high possibility the power source for these magic arrays are situated in the central region. If we destroy the mana crystal there, we should be able to complete this quest. Guild leader, I never expected you to know so much about magic arrays. For a second there, I even thought you were an elementalist or a cursemancer, and not a swordsman at all, Aqua Rose said teasingly. I just studied the topic by accident. There are plenty of books on magic arrays inside the library of White River City after all. If you manage to read all the books inside the White River City library, you will definitely be more amazing than I am, Shifeng laughed. The library? I would like to go there, but I'll need a permit to do so. Guild leader, since you're the one who mentioned it, you have to take responsibility. Aqua Rose also knew the importance of the library. If an elementalist wished to learn more powerful spells, the best way to do so was at the library. Unfortunately, she lacked the permit to enter the library. The only choice she had now was to steadily raise her reputation in White River City. Okay, I'll get you a permit to the library after we leave this place. Shifeng shook his head and laughed again. As a demon hunter, he could obtain a permit to the library anytime he wanted. Moreover, now that he was a Viscount of White River City as one of the true nobles of the city, he could easily obtain a handful of library emblems. Following which, the 3 of them ran towards the central region of the Forgotten Lands. 4 hours later, the trio arrived outside the central region. If they wished to enter the place, they needed to go through a very long crystalline pathway. However, there was a giant 3-headed wolf made out of blue crystals blocking the entrance of the pathway. So there is a monster here after all. Fire Dance's eyes glowed with interest when she saw this 3-headed wolf. After several days of no combat, her hands were already itching for action. Chapter 274, Dark Gold Treasure Chest. The presence of a monster doesn't necessarily mean it's a good thing, Shifeng said, a bitter smile on his face as he looked at the 3-headed wolf guarding the entrance of the crystal pathway. Crystal War Wolf, Lord Rank. Level 25. HP 300, 000/300, 000. Compared to a dungeon boss, a field boss of the same rank was much more powerful. Moreover, in order to counter Zerg tactics, God's domain had set it so that field bosses would have their combat power and HP increased in proportion to the number of players participating in the battle. Generally, the optimum number of players required to raid a Lord-ranked field boss was around 10 to 20, unless of course it was a special boss. However, judging from the appearance of the Crystal Warwolf before them, Shifeng felt that it should not be a special boss. In other words, at least 10 players were needed to raid this boss. To make matters worse, the Crystal Warwolf was a level 25 monster, while nobody in Shifeng's group had even reached level 20, the resulting level suppression would be dire. Of those present, aside from Shifeng who had the Abyssal Blade, which allowed him to fully ignore this level suppression, only Aqua Rose possessed a piece of equipment with the Ignore Levels attribute. Even so, her equipment only allowed her to ignore up to 3 levels. Aqua Rose herself was only at level 17 right now, and a level suppression of 5 levels would not be easy for her to deal with. As for Fire Dance, there was nothing to say. Of course, every cloud had a silver lining. Since the boss guarding the crystal pathway was very strong, it meant that the things beyond the pathway was equally important. Moreover, Shifeng also discovered a treasure chest sitting beside the pathway. This treasure chest was a dark gold treasure chest, and Shifeng's heart burned with a fiery passion as he looked at it. The loot he could get from this dark gold treasure chest would be much better than the loot from the boss before him. We won't be able to defeat a level 20 lord with just the three of us alone. We'll need to call for reinforcements. Aqua Rose's eyes glowed with excitement when she looked at the crystal werewolf before her. It was extremely difficult for players to meet with a field boss. They would definitely make a huge profit after killing it. Not to mention there was also the treasure chest the crystal werewolf was guarding. Following which, Aqua Rose temporarily logged off the game to contact Blackie, who was at the Zero Wing workshop, telling him to bring the main force of Zero Wing to the Purple Sun Mansion and enter the staircase to the basement, in order to meet up with them at the Forgotten Lands. Meanwhile, Shifeng ceaselessly observed the crystal werewolf and the surrounding terrain, trying to think of a strategy to raid the boss. 10 minutes later, Aqua Rose logged back into the game. How did it go? When will they be arriving? Shifeng asked. They're already at the Purple Sun Mansion. However, no matter what they tried, they can't seem to find the entrance to this map, Aqua Rose said, slight disappointment showing on her face. If so, the appearance of the entrance should be random, Shifeng said, lapsing into silent contemplation. After a while, he shifted his sights to the crystal werewolf and added, "It seems we can only depend on ourselves to defeat this boss." Hearing Shifeng's conclusion, both Aqua Rose and Fire Dance immediately thought that Shifeng had gone insane. He was actually suggesting they deal with this crystal werewolf before them. They had neither an MT nor a healer in the party right now. With just 3 damage dealers, how were they supposed to deal with a level 25 Lord rank boss that had a height of over 10 meters? Although both girls knew of Shifeng's unrivaled strength, a Lord rank boss was still not something that could be defeated with just 3 players. We're only giving it a try. In any case, we can't just stay stuck in this place forever, right? Moreover, even if we do die, it is a good chance to check whether or not we can actually leave this place after dying. We'll be killing 2 birds with 1 stone, Shifeng joked. Guild leader, you decide what we should do then, Fire Dance said with high spirits. Aqua Rose sighed helplessly. Alright then. I'll join in as well. We can't just fight this crystal werewolf head-on. The only choice we have is to kite it. I'll act as bait. Aqua Rose, you'll be the main damage dealer. Fire Dance, you'll be responsible for restricting its movements as much as possible. After some consideration, Shifeng settled on this strategy. Although he could no longer equip the Heavenly Dragon's Breath, his agility was still over 200 points. Moreover, his equipment also provided additional movement speed. His movement speed was definitely faster than a level 25 Lord. Combining those with his keen reactions, out of the 3 players in the party, he was definitely the most suited to be the bait. Following which, Shifeng gave Fire Dance plenty of basic frost grenades and intermediate frost grenades, letting her use them as she saw fit. Fire Dance never thought Shifeng would possess such good items. With the frost grenades, Shifeng would have a much higher chance of success at kiting the boss. After the 3 of them were in position, Shifeng retrieved the blazing meteor from his waist. Standing at a distance of 40 yards from the crystal werewolf, Shifeng aimed the throwing weapon at the boss and threw it. Shio! The blazing meteor streaked through the air and pierced the crystal werewolf's eye, causing -651 damage to it. Compared to a one-handed sword, Shifeng's damage with the throwing weapon was much higher. Ayo! The crystal werewolf let out an agonized wail. With bloodshot eyes, the crystal werewolf glared at the direction where the throwing weapon came from. As a result of its actions, however, the blazing meteor, which was still lodged in its eye, damaged the visual organ even further, causing an additional burst of -1,300 damage. The crystal werewolf was utterly angered now, and using its powerful hind legs, it leaped and charged at Shifeng. Immediately, Shifeng turned around and ran. Everything was just like Shifeng had guessed. His speed was just a tad faster than the crystal werewolf's. However, in order to avoid having Aqua Rose's and Fire Dance's aggro on the boss exceed his, which would in turn lead to the crystal werewolf attacking the 2 girls, Shifeng needed to constantly send attacks at the boss to strengthen his aggro on it. As a result, the crystal werewolf would oftentimes catch up and attack him. The crystal werewolf's attacks were extremely powerful. A single swipe from its paws could easily shatter the floor, resulting in fist-sized rubble flying everywhere. Fortunately, Shifeng always managed to nimbly evade the Crystal Werewolf's razor-sharp claws at the very last second, before pulling away from the boss and attacking it once more. Shifeng's attacks were only meant as a provocation. Aqua Rose was the true damage dealer this time around. After the Demon's Castle raid, Aqua Rose had 2 dark gold ranked items on her person. Of the 2, one was even a dark gold ranked staff of the finest quality. Aqua Rose's damage right now was already considerably high. If not for Blackie outshining her with the epic ranked Mavis's guard, Aqua Rose would definitely have the highest single output damage in the guild. As Shifeng ran around the perimeter with the Crystal Werewolf chasing after him, Aqua Rose stood in the center and blasted frost arrows and frost spears on the Crystal Werewolf's body. Not only could these spells reduce movement speed, each of these spells also dealt over -500 damage to the boss. If not due to the level suppression of 5 levels, her spells would definitely deal over -800 damage. Fortunately, unlike Shifeng who could only attack intermittently, Aqua Rose could attack continuously and deal a constant stream of damage to the boss. On the other side, Fire Dance kept inflicting the bleeding debuff and using poisons that reduced movement speed on the boss. With the 2 movement speed reduction effects stacked together, the Crystal Werewolf slowed down significantly. Also, whenever the Crystal Werewolf got too close to Shifeng, Fire Dance would immediately throw a frost grenade at the boss, freezing it. However, as the Crystal Werewolf was a Lord-ranked boss, the freezing effect of the frost grenades was greatly diminished, lasting no more than 3 seconds. Sometimes it lasted for only 1 short second. However, when experts exchanged moves, it took only an instant to reach a conclusion, so 1 second was more than enough for Shifeng to pull a great distance away from the boss. Although the 3 of them dealt only a small amount of damage, the HP of the Crystal Werewolf continuously rose and fell. After more than a dozen minutes passed, the Crystal Werewolf had only 30% of its 300,000 HP remaining. By simple estimates, the boss would die in less than 10 minutes. Ow! The Crystal Werewolf went berserk. Just like a deflated balloon, its towering body, which was over 10 meters in height, suddenly shrank. Within moments, the boss became much smaller than it was before. Not good. This is the type of berserk that discards power for speed. Shifeng had encountered plenty of such bosses in the past. Hence, the moment he witnessed the Crystal Werewolf's transformation, he immediately recognized the boss for what it was. Fire Dance, keep on using the frost grenades to slow it down. Understood. Fire Dance knew that this was a crucial period. Hence, she tossed out the frost grenades in her hands one after another without pause. However, something unexpected happened. Aside from the frost grenades dealing much less damage than before, both their movement speed reduction and freezing effects were completely useless against the boss. In the blink of an eye, the shrunken Crystal Werewolf appeared before Shifeng. It brandished its claws. Its 3 heads bared the fangs in its mouths and it bit down at him. Although Shifeng managed to deftly evade the 3 jaws clamping down on him, he failed to evade one of the paws that quickly followed. Suddenly, Shifeng's entire person was sent flying for more than 10 yards, and a frightening damage of more than -2,100 appeared above his head. Shifeng felt as if his chest had caved in when he received the attack. Shifeng's HP instantly fell to a dangerous level, his previously green HP bar turning into a bright red. Having no other choice, Shifeng activated Gravity Liberation. Shifeng's body instantly became as light as a feather, and like a spirited monkey, he dodged the originally unavoidable attack. Wind Blade. Immediately, Shifeng's attack speed increased even further. Double Chop. Earth Splitter. Thunder Flame Explosion. Skills blasted on the Crystal Werewolf one after another, each dealing over -1,000 damage. Although the Crystal Werewolf's attacks became stronger and its speed much faster after going berserk, these improvements came at the price of its defense being weakened. Combined with the 20% damage amplification effect of Thundering Flash, the damage the Crystal Werewolf received became a lot higher than before. Fire Dance's and Aqua Rose's attacks also landed at this point, so the Crystal Werewolf's HP fell sharply. By the time the 30-second duration of Gravity Liberation was almost over, the Crystal Werewolf only had 10% of its HP remaining. Just as the effect of Gravity Liberation was about to end, Shifeng executed 9 Dragon's Slash. 9 Phantoms of the Abyssal Blade appeared behind Shifeng, and all of them shot towards the Crystal Werewolf. Meanwhile, just as an attack from the Crystal Warwolf was about to land on Shi Feng swapped positions with his doppelganger. Upon being relocated, the doppelganger immediately used parry and defensive blade to repel the Crystal Warwolf's attacks. Each phantom of the Abyssal Blade had high attack power, and each of them could deal over -150 damage every time they struck at the Crystal Warwolf. In total, the 9 phantoms dealt over -1,300 damage to the Crystal Warwolf every second. Meanwhile, there were 28 seconds before the effect of 9 Dragons Slash ended. After having used up both of its life-saving skills, parry and defensive blade, the doppelganger received a direct hit from the Crystal Warwolf's claws. Alas, the doppelganger only had 50% of Shi Feng's attributes, so it died on the spot. However, the doppelganger had earned a lot of time for Shi Feng. With the doppelganger gone, the Crystal Warwolf shifted its attention back to Shi Feng's actual body. Shi Feng activated Wind Walk again without hesitation. He then whirled around and ran. Fortunately, with his movement speed increased by 30%, Shi Feng was still a tad faster than the Crystal Warwolf, which was still under the 20% attribute reduction effect of the Doom Curse. Thus, the kiting strategy began once more. Under Aqua Rose's and Fire Dance's constant barrage, the Crystal Warwolf's HP fell lower and lower. 9%, 8%, 7%. By the time the effect of Shi Feng's Windwalk was about to end, the Crystal Warwolf only had 3% of its HP remaining. It should be about time. At this moment, Shi Feng stopped running. He then turned to face the Crystal Warwolf, pointing the Abyssal Blade at the monster. Abyssal Bind. 9 snake-like chains suddenly surfaced from the floor, instantly binding the Crystal Warwolf. Although the Crystal Warwolf had been immune to the control skills used on it before, its movements were still bound by the pitch-black chains. In God's domain, the so-called immunity to control skills did not necessarily make one immune to all control skills. Instead, it simply made one immune to control skills that were below a certain tier. Skills such as Frost Arrow, Ice Sphere, and Kidney Strike were all considered basic skills. In other words, they were Tier 0 skills. As these skills were of the lowest tier, the Crystal Warwolf was completely immune to their effects. As a level 25 Lord, the Crystal Warwolf was immune to any control skills that was below Tier 2. However, Tier 2 or Tier 3 control skills could still restrain it. Although Shi Feng did not know which tier the Abyssal Bind belonged to, it was a skill attached to a magic weapon. In Shi Feng's estimation, it should be at least Tier 3 or above, meaning that it would be effective against all bosses that could possibly appear at this stage of the game. With the Crystal Warwolf completely restrained, Shi Feng took a step forward as he activated his ultimate skill, Flame Burst, which could only be used around once every 4 minutes. Shi Feng's 2 swords were just like miniature suns with the activation of Flame Burst. In the blink of an eye, Shi Feng slashed the Crystal Warwolf's body 6 times with his swords. As for Shi Feng, he had only recently reached level 18, so he was still at level 18 even after killing the Crystal Warwolf. If he could kill several more of such Lord-ranked bosses, he would definitely level up very quickly. I never thought a Lord-ranked boss could be killed in such a way as well. This battle was an eye-opener for Aqua Rose. In truth, however, if not for Shi Feng being capable of holding a stable aggro on the Crystal Warwolf, in addition to consistently evading its multitude of attacks, they definitely could not have killed it. Guild leader quickly checked the loot. As a huge fan of Shi Feng, Fire Dance was not surprised by Shi Feng's ingenuity. She had always believed Shi Feng could lead them to victory. Moreover, Fire Dance was hoping to reach Shi Feng's standards one day. How could she allow herself to falter when faced with a Lord-ranked boss? Shi Feng nodded in reply, promptly going ahead and checking the loot left behind by the Crystal Warwolf. It can't be, right? How could this boss be so cheap? How could it drop only 1 key and 1 piece of equipment? Aqua Rose immediately grew unhappy when she saw the information shared by Shi Feng. What was even more annoying was that the equipment dropped was only a level 20 fine gold ranked plate armor wrist guard. It wasn't even dark gold rank. Not bad. Don't forget that this 7 Luminaries key can be used up to 3 times to open a dark gold treasure chest. Isn't there a dark gold treasure chest right before us? Shi Feng laughed. After Aqua Rose had followed Shi Feng for some time, unconsciously her standard for judging items became much higher than before. If it was in the past, Aqua Rose would definitely have forgotten herself in joy if she saw a fine gold equipment. Now, however, unless an item was of dark gold rank, it would not even pique her interest. That's right. Aqua Rose shifted her sights towards the distant treasure chest. After the arduous battle, the existence of this dark gold treasure chest had completely slipped her mind. They could get a dark gold equipment at the very minimum if they opened this treasure chest. There was also a small chance for them to obtain an epic ranked item. Epic ranked items. Aqua Rose did not dare to even hope for one. Chapter 276, Dragonscale Set Equipment. It's locked as expected. No matter how hard Shifeng tried, he could not open the dark gold treasure chest. Hence, he retrieved the key he had just obtained from his bag. Catch. The lid of the purple gold-colored treasure chest popped open slightly. Multicolored lights escaped between the gap, the lights illuminating even areas that were several hundred yards away. If this treasure chest had been opened out in the fields, it would definitely cause a huge commotion and attract many players to come and snatch it. Fortunately, there was only Shifeng's group of 3 in the Forgotten Lands. After the multicolored lights faded away, Shifeng reached into the treasure chest. However, he quickly discovered there were only very few items inside it. The treasure chest contained a total of 3 items. Of them, 2 were dark gold equipment, while 1 was a forging manual. The 2 dark gold equipment were the crystal armor and the boots of extreme speed. Crystal armor, chest piece, plate armor, dark gold rank. Level 20. Equipment requirement: Strength 120, Agility 140. Defense plus 140. Strength plus 24, Agility plus 21, Endurance plus 20. Restricted to swordsman. Additional passive skill dash. Smart Outbreak. Every time user receives damage, strength and agility increased by 2% for 15 seconds. Stacks up to 5 times. Although the basic attributes on this piece of equipment could only be considered at the level of being good, the passive skill that was attached to it was simply amazing. After all, the passive skill could potentially increase a player's strength and agility by 10%. If the wearer of the crystal armor originally had high amounts of strength and agility, the additional attributes provided by Smart Outbreak would be like having equipped an additional piece of equipment at the very least. The only downside to this passive skill was its need for the user to take damage up to 5 times. Although such a condition had made it relatively useless in boss battles, when used in grinding monsters and PK, it would definitely provide the wearer of the crystal armor with unspeakable advantages. Boots of extreme speed, shoes, leather armor, dark gold rank. Level 20. Equipment requirement: Strength 90, Agility 130. Defense plus 143. Strength plus 20, Agility plus 26, Endurance plus 18. Movement speed plus 10. Evasion plus 7. Additional passive skill dash. Rapid movement. Increases movement speed by 12% and agility by 8%. In regard to assassins and rangers, the most sought-after attribute for these 2 classes was agility, followed by strength. Meanwhile, this pair of boots increased the wearer's agility to the extremes. One could even argue that no other level 20 dark gold ranked shoes could increase agility as much as the boots of extreme speed could. Although these 2 pieces of dark gold equipment were excellent, they were worth barely a fragment of the true value of this dark gold treasure chest. After all, the item that reflected the true value of the dark gold treasure chest was none other than the forging manual. In addition, it was even a fine gold ranked forging manual. Forging manuals were different from forging designs. In the case of forging designs, only one particular piece of equipment could be made using it. In the case of forging manuals, however, an entire set of equipment could be made using it. This forging manual was meant to produce the level 20 Dragonscale set equipment. There were a total of 6 pieces in this set, and it could be worn by any class that could use plate armor. Previously, Shifeng had spent over 100 gold at the Blackwing auction house just to purchase the forging design for the Arclight shield. However, the value of the Arclight shield was far from being comparable to the Dragonscale set equipment. After all, the Dragonscale set equipment was a fine gold ranked set equipment. Throughout the entire Starmoon Kingdom, not a single guild had managed to obtain a secret silver-ranked set equipment up to now. One could simply imagine the value of a fine gold-ranked set equipment. If Shifeng could forge a few sets of the Dragonscale set equipment and give them to the plate armor classes in the guild's main force, when these players walked on the streets wearing the Dragonscale set equipment, one could simply imagine the shock on the other players' faces when they see the set equipment. The members of other guilds would definitely tremble with fear. Just the thought of such a scene was simply exhilarating. However, it would definitely be extremely difficult to forge the Dragonscale set equipment. As it was a set equipment, the difficulty of producing the entire set would be no less than producing a piece of dark gold equipment. Shi Feng was only an advanced forging apprentice right now. Without raising his forging level, producing the Dragonscale set equipment would only be a pipe dream. At the very least, he needed to get promoted to an intermediate forger or advanced forger before he had an actual chance of producing the Dragonscale set equipment. I have to raise my forging levels after we return. Shi Feng formed a plan in his mind as he looked at the Dragonscale forging manual. Shi Feng then handed the boots of extreme speed to Fire Dance. Now that Fire Dance had reached level 19, she was only a short distance away from level 20. As for the crystal armor and Dragonscale forging manual, he kept both of them for himself. After resting for a short while, Shi Feng's group of 3 entered the crystal pathway. The crystal pathway was so long that one could not see the end of it in a single glance. Moreover, the elemental mana present in this pathway was extremely dense, so much so that it was even visible in the form of an aurora. It was an absolutely stunning sight to behold. Aside from being visually appealing, the dense mana also gave the 3 of them a buff, increasing the magic damage they could deal by 300%. One could simply imagine how dense the elemental mana was in this pathway. Before they knew it, Shi Feng's group of 3 had walked for more than an hour inside this crystal pathway. When they finally emerged, they were at the base of a huge mountain. When the 3 of them laid eyes on this mountain, they were immediately stunned. This entire mountain can't be made out of 7 Luminaries crystal, right? Aqua Rose stared at the crystal mountain, her heart filled with immense shock. Aqua Rose had previously visited the Blackwing auction house, so she had seen 7 Luminaries crystal before. It was common knowledge that the 7 Luminaries crystal was one of the best mana-conducting crystals in God's domain. Not only was it extremely rare, its price was even more impressive. Not even White River City, a city with a population of several million, was qualified to use such a precious commodity. Throughout the entire Starmoon Kingdom, only the Palace and Starmoon auction house at the capital city could afford to use a floating platform made out of 7 Luminaries crystal. Previously, Aqua Rose had believed that the crystal pathway was actually made out of mana crystals. However, the sight of this large mountain and its surrounding environment overturned her previous assumptions. The reason being, it was simply impossible for mere mana crystals to fill their surroundings with such dense elemental mana, resulting in even the formation of 7 colored mana clouds. It should be. Shi Feng nodded blankly. Shi Feng's mind grew heated at the thought of having so much 7 Luminaries crystal. On the market, a 7 Luminaries crystal the size of a small residential house could be used to purchase a large town with a population of 50,000, with plenty to spare. Meanwhile, the 7 Luminaries crystal before him was in the form of a mountain, and in terms of size, this mountain could rival even White River City. A city made entirely of 7 Luminaries crystal. Just what sort of concept was this? Even if the entire Starmoon Kingdom was sold, it would not be enough to purchase so much 7 Luminaries crystals. Unfortunately, none of these crystals could be taken away. It was not even possible to pick some to take back. If they wished to mine these 7 Luminaries crystals, at the very least, they needed to reach master level in mining. Shi Feng was only at basic apprentice level in mining right now, and not even in his dreams could he mine these 7 Luminaries crystals. 7 Luminaries crystal was even more valuable than gold. Yet, even though so much 7 Luminaries crystals were sitting right before him, he could do nothing but look at it. Shi Feng's heart simply bled at this thought. However, this couldn't be helped. Who would have ever thought there would be so much 7 Luminaries crystals at this place? Shi Feng shook his head, banishing his thoughts. He then moved his sights towards a flight of stairs a short distance away that led to the peak of the mountain, saying, "Let's go up and take a look. We might discover how to unseal this place up there." Fire Dance did not know the true value of 7 Luminaries crystal, hence she barely reacted to it. She had simply been mesmerized by the beauty of this mountain. Aqua Rose, on the other hand, knew full well the value of this mountain. If Fire Dance had not given her a shove, rousing her from her stupor, Aqua Rose would definitely still be immersed in her shock. After all, this entire mountain was a mountain of money. If she could nick even a tiny piece of this mountain, the coins converted from it would be enough to sustain even a first-rate guild for a long time. As the trio traversed the stairs up the mountain, Shi Feng suddenly felt an oppressive pressure bearing down on him. Moreover, this pressure was exactly the same as what he had felt at the Purple Sun Mansion, only a lot more powerful. The pressure only grew stronger and stronger as they climbed further up the mountain. By the time Shifeng arrived at the mountain top, he was already drenched in sweat. His body also felt extremely heavy as if it were made out of lead. Meanwhile, the two girls, Fire Dance and Aqua Rose, fared much worse than Shifeng. At this moment, both girls were sprawled on the ground, their bodies refusing to move even an inch. Unable to help his teammates, Shifeng decided to walk towards a monolith visible at a distance by himself. Just by looking at this semi-transparent sky-blue monolith, Shifeng could immediately sense that it was the heart of this land. It was obvious that this standing stone was the thing that filled the surrounding environment with such dense elemental mana, and not the mountain-sized 7 Luminaries crystal. Arriving before the monolith, Shifeng discovered many golden divine runes engraved on the bottom of the standing stone. They were by far the most complicated divine runes Shifeng had ever seen. Also, Shifeng had actually discovered a figure flickering in and out of existence within the semi-transparent monolith. When Shifeng took a closer look at this figure, his eyes immediately widened in shock. He simply couldn't believe what he was seeing was real. The reason being, Shifeng had seen the figure inside the stone before. However, Shifeng was confused. Why would this person appear here? Chapter 277, A God's Grave. While Shifeng was still in a daze, Fire Dance and Aqua Rose caught up with him, having recovered from their exhaustion. Guild leader, did you find anything? Fire Dance asked out of curiosity when she saw Shifeng lost in thought. Aqua Rose, on the other hand, did not notice any difference in Shifeng's demeanor, because the moment she arrived before the monolith, her attention was completely caught by something else. As an elementalist, she was much more sensitive to magic power than players of other classes. The frightening magic power radiating from the monolith was definitely the purest form of magic power Aqua Rose had ever felt, as if it was the master of all elemental mana. When Aqua Rose noticed the figure inside the monolith, she too froze on the spot. How is it possible? Aqua Rose could not believe what she saw. She rubbed her eyes, thinking they were playing tricks on her. Aqua Rose's reaction baffled Fire Dance. What has gotten into the two of you? Fire Dance looked at Aqua Rose, then at Shifeng, confused by their reactions. You'll understand after taking a look inside the monolith, Shifeng said slowly, pointing towards the figure in the monolith. Fire Dance then transferred her gaze to the monolith. How could she be here? Fire Dance asked in shock. Fire Dance knew the figure in the monolith. Moreover, she had met this person only recently. This person was none other than Charlene, the divine official who faced off against the two fallen angels back at the demon's castle. To be precise, the woman within the monolith looked exactly the same as Charlene. Even the saintly aura she emitted was similar to Charlene's. If Fire Dance had to point to a difference between the two women, then it would be the pressure this woman gave off. This was no longer an oppression due to strength. Instead, this pressure was the instinctive reverence for a primordial life form, just like the reverence mortals had towards gods. Could she possibly be a god? Fire Dance suddenly had this thought when she looked at the woman who looked like Charlene. Shifeng's thoughts were running along similar lines to Fire Dance's. However, Shifeng could say with certainty that the woman inside the monolith was definitely a Tier 6 god, because in the past he had personally experienced this overbearing pressure, which could only be exuded by a god. If the woman in the monolith was simply a Tier 6 god, Shifeng would not have found the matter too shocking. After all, during his decade of playing God's Domain, he had personally met with plenty of Tier 6 players and NPCs. The thing that truly startled him was the fact that the woman before him looked identical to Charlene. Back at the Purple Sun Mansion, he had already experienced this kind of pressure. He had simply forgotten where he had felt it before. Now he knew why that pressure felt so familiar. After all, he had felt a similar pressure from Charlene. Only, the pressure Charlene gave off was not as powerful as the one he felt at the Purple Sun Mansion, hence he failed to recognize it. Not only did the two women look exactly the same, even the pressure they emitted felt similar. The only real difference between the two were their actual strengths. If Shifeng was told that the woman before him was Charlene, he would definitely not believe it. After all, Charlene was only a Tier 3 divine official. She was still miles away from becoming a Tier 6 god. Yet, if he was told that Charlene had no connection to this woman before him, then he likewise would not believe it. Although the woman inside the monolith was clearly no longer alive, at the end of the day she was still a god. As long as her body did not receive any intentional damage, it would not undergo any decay. As of now, Shifeng finally realized that the Forgotten Lands was merely the grave of a god. However, he was still curious about who had actually created this masterpiece. This great personage had actually made such a complex magic array that utilized a god's body as its power source. The materials used to create the magic array even included the extremely valuable 7 Luminaries crystal. Just what kind of thing was this great personage trying to seal? Even if it was for the purpose of sealing a god, there should not be a need for so much resources. It seems there is a deep connection between Charlene and this place. Shifeng had long since felt that Charlene's origins were not simple. The fact that she was a Tier 3 NPC was already amazing in and of itself. Charlene was also capable of handing out an epic quest to Shifeng. Now, there was even a god that looked exactly the same as Charlene. Even Shifeng could not fathom Charlene's true identity, unless he went and asked Charlene herself. Shifeng was extremely curious about this matter. He vowed to himself to visit Charlene, who was at the stargazing tower at Blackwing City, after this entire ordeal was over. Guild leader, what are we supposed to do now? Destroy this monolith? Aquarose asked. The mana source of this magic array clearly originated from this monolith. If they wished to release the seal on the Forgotten Lands, their only choice was to destroy the monolith. However, it was unknown what sort of reaction they would incur if they did so. There was a god inside the monolith after all. Let's give it a try. Shifeng had taken a look at the monolith's surroundings just now. However, he did not discover any mechanisms that would allow him to undo the magic array. After Shifeng nodded, Fire Dance immediately took action by slashing at the monolith with her 2 daggers. However, the 2 fine gold-ranked daggers, which could easily cut through metal like a hot knife through butter, simply grazed the surface of the monolith, creating dazzling sparks in the process. There was not even a mark left on the monolith. Hard. Fire Dance's hands went numb from the attack. It felt as if her daggers had hit God's steel. I'll try using magic. Aqua Rose started chanting the incantation for Chain Explosion. With the elemental mana so dense in this place, any spells used here would be greatly enhanced. Originally, Chain Explosion would only summon 5 fireballs, each the size of a washbowl. When Aqua Rose cast the spell now, however, the fireballs grew to the size of a small house. When these fireballs bombarded the monolith, they were like meteors hurtling down from the sky. Sparks flew in all directions as the fireballs crashed into the monolith. After the flames subsided, Aqua Rose was greatly shocked by the result. The monolith remained completely unscathed. On the contrary, it even looked more brilliant and dazzling than before. Shifeng wrinkled his brows at this sight. If even Aqua Rose's ultimate move could not deal any damage to the monolith, he would most likely end up with a similar result if he tried to attack the monolith. Since we can't destroy the monolith, we'll need to use some other method to destroy the magic array, Shifeng said. The main god system would not hand out a quest that players had no hope of actually completing. If they couldn't destroy the power source of the magic array nor the magic array itself, then there was only one other thing they could destroy. The connection points. Aqua, help me look for the connection points of this magic array, Shifeng said. I see. Aqua Rose immediately understood Shifeng's intention. Fire Dance, however, remained clueless after the two's brief conversation. As an assassin, she knew next to nothing about magic. Hence, she could only stay by the monolith's side as she watched her 2 friends hard at work. Meanwhile, Shifeng and Aqua Rose started searching the surroundings of the monolith for the veins that carried magic power to the 5 modules of the magic array. Only by looking for veins could they locate the connection points. Normally, the quickest way to destroy a magic array was to destroy its power core. If that was not viable, then the 2 other remaining options would be to destroy the magic array itself and to destroy the connection points of the magic array. Destroying the magic array itself was an extremely challenging task to pull off. On the other hand, it was a very simple task to destroy the connection points. Unfortunately, locating these connection points was also a very difficult task. A connection point was a node that connected the magic array to its power source. It acted similar to a circuit breaker in real life. Only, instead of being used to prevent an overflow of electric current, the connection point served to limit the amount of mana flowing from the power source to the magic array. If the connection point was damaged, then the mana supply would surge and consequently, the magic array would destroy itself due to excessive mana input. After searching for some time, Shifeng finally found a connection point. He promptly struck down with the abyssal blade, destroying the connection point. However, this enormous and complex magic array did not possess only a single connection point. They needed to search and destroy all the connection points of the magic array. After several more hours passed, Aqua Rose found another connection point, which she quickly destroyed. Even so, the magic array remained stable. In this way, Shifeng and Aqua Rose spent the entire day destroying more than 20 connection points. Although the destruction of the connection points had a slight effect on the magic array, it was clear that the damage was within the parameters of the magic array's design. Not good. Guild leader, one of the connection points you previously destroyed is back to normal. Having nothing better to do, Fire Dance had tagged along with Shifeng, hoping to learn how she too could search for the connection points. However, during her observations, she suddenly discovered that one of the connection points Shifeng had previously destroyed had actually recovered. What did you say? Shifeng asked in disbelief. Even the connection points could restore themselves? Shifeng started to suspect that this was no longer an ordinary magic array but a magic array that had already cultivated into a demon. Shifeng had seen plenty of Tier 5 magic arrays in the past. He had even seen Tier 6 magic arrays before. However, he had never once heard of a magic array that was capable of repairing itself. Chapter 278, The Great Catastrophe. By no means can we continue like this. There might be hundreds of connection points in this magic array. By the time we locate the ones remaining, the other connection points might have repaired themselves already, Shifeng said, his head aching. A magic array that was capable of self-repair was simply unheard of. If they did not have a dozen or so players moving separately to destroy the connection points, it was simply impossible to destroy every single connection point in this magic array. Destroying the connection points suddenly became a much harder task than Shifeng had imagined it to be. Guild leader, I found something here. Come over and take a look, Aqua Rose said through the party chat. Hearing that there was a new discovery, Shifeng immediately hurried over to Aqua Rose's location. Aqua Rose was currently situated in the middle of this 7 Luminaries mountain, inside an extremely obscure cave. If not for the indicator provided by the system map, Shifeng could not have found the cave Aqua Rose was in. After entering the cave, Shifeng immediately observed his surroundings. He discovered that the walls of the cave were covered with engravings of divine runes. The golden glow these divine runes were giving off brightly illuminating the interior of the cave. Looking at the cave's central crystal pillar, Shifeng noticed a blood-red stone embedded in it. This piece of stone was just like a beating heart, only instead of bright red liquid, an endless amount of mana passed through it. Meanwhile, the mana that passed through this blood-red stone became much purer in quality. Aqua, how did you manage to find this place? Shifeng asked, astonished by this scene before him. I just happened to discover a particularly thick mana vein and followed it here. Aqua Rose beamed a proud smile at Shifeng. If they demolished this place, then the magic array would definitely be finished. Guild leader, I'll start destroying this place, alright? Aqua Rose could wait no longer. She had been trapped in this godforsaken place for so many days now. During this period of time, she had no option but to keep contact with her subordinates through the phone in order to make arrangements for the daily affairs of the guild. She had also instructed them to prepare for the establishment of their guild residence. Currently, most of the average players in White River City were already around level 14 to level 15, while the elite players of the various guilds were already at level 17. The intensity of the competition for the 3 great dungeons had also reached its peak by now. Out of all the guilds in White River City, Ouroboros shone the brightest. They had already managed to take down the second boss of the hard mode Land of Death, and they were currently in the midst of challenging the third boss of the dungeon. Meanwhile, Dark Star, which ranked after Ouroboros, was still attempting to raid the second boss. As for the other guilds, they had also passed through normal mode, and were currently preparing to raid hard mode. Furthermore, as players started raiding the hard mode bosses of the 3 great dungeons, they soon discovered the astonishing benefits they could obtain. Aside from dropping level 15 secret silver ranked set equipment, the bosses also dropped plenty of recipes and designs. Players could also obtain the guild task order that could not be obtained from 20-man team dungeons or lower. These guild task orders could be used to accelerate the promotion of a guild. Otherwise, it would take ages for guilds to get promoted if they simply relied on the meager guild reputation their members obtained by completing daily quests. Yet, as one of the top 6 guilds in White River City, Zero Wing had actually remained inactive all this time. Not only had it accomplished nothing during this period of time, it did not even set foot in any of the 3 great dungeons. It had simply focused its attention on raiding level 15, 10 and 20-man dungeons, and its decision to do so had greatly confused the masses. Even though Zero Wing clearly had the strength to challenge the 3 great dungeons, it had chosen not to take action instead. The guild's behavior had caused many of the new members to grow dissatisfied, and a majority of these players had chosen to leave the guild one after another. Very quickly, Zero Wing's member count that had originally exceeded 8,000 had quickly dwindled down to just slightly more than 6,000. This situation had panicked Aqua Rose somewhat. In reply to Aqua Rose's panic, Shifeng had simply said, "If they wish to leave, then let them leave. You don't need to stop them. The guild is too bloated right now, so this is a good chance to rid ourselves of those that joined solely with the intention of taking advantage of us. The guild would become much purer after those players are gone." Hearing Shifeng saying so, Aqua Rose had no choice but to turn a blind eye to all the players withdrawing from the guild. However, she did make sure to record the names of those who left. In the future they would no longer be welcomed into the guild. Meanwhile, the players that withdrew from the guild simply reacted with contempt at Aqua Rose's actions. They had even made a mockery of Zero Wing, declaring that they would never rejoin a lousy guild like Zero Wing. Moreover, as if to rub salt into the wound, Dark Star had also been secretly killing many players from Zero Wing, causing even more players to withdraw from the guild. As of this moment, there were only around 4,000 members remaining in Zero Wing. Not to mention a third-rate guild, they were not even comparable to a large unrated guild right now. Hence, Aqua Rose was in a rush to break out of this place. She wanted to quickly return and rectify the guild. "Hold on a minute," Shifeng hurriedly said when he noticed a large fireball already appearing in Aqua Rose's hand. "We don't really need to destroy it." "But how are we supposed to leave this place if we don't destroy it then?" Aqua Rose asked. "I have my own ways." Shifeng revealed a faint smile as he looked at the blood-red stone embedded inside the crystal pillar. Shifeng truly had not expected to find this piece of blood-red stone here. Instead of calling it a blood-red stone, it would be more appropriate to refer to it as the Philosopher's Stone. Previously, Shifeng had obtained a fragment of the Philosopher's Stone back at the Sun Temple. Now he had stumbled upon another fragment. The Philosopher's Stone was an alchemy treasure. Despite being fragmented into 5 pieces, each of these individual pieces still contained the strength of an epic-ranked item. Also, when Shifeng discovered the Philosopher's Stone at this place, he quickly understood just how the connection points of the magic array had managed to repair themselves. It turned out it was all because of the Philosopher's Stone. "Although I can't take away any of these 7 Luminaries crystals, it is still not bad if I can return with this piece of the Philosopher's Stone." Shifeng arrived before the crystal pillar. He then inserted the tip of the abyssal blade into the crevice in the crystal pillar where the Philosopher's Stone was set. With a light tap on the pommel of the abyssal blade, the Philosopher's Stone easily popped out from the crystal pillar. Shifeng promptly retrieved the item and stored it in his bag. Shortly after the Philosopher's Stone was removed from the crystal pillar, the cave started fading away. Moreover, the rate at which it disappeared was visible to the naked eye. The dense elemental mana that filled the air and land also gradually dispersed, becoming thinner and thinner. As for the incomparably hard 7 Luminaries crystals, they too had began turning into ash. "Not good. This place is about to collapse. We need to leave immediately." Shifeng shouted through the party chat as soon as he noticed this change. Shifeng's group of 3 rushed down the 7 Luminaries mountain, and before long the entire mountain started imploding. The magic array that sealed the Forgotten Lands also lost its effectiveness. As for the monolith that had previously been standing on the mountaintop, it remained floating high up in the sky. Gradually, the monolith rose higher and higher, before suddenly releasing a rainbow brilliance. The monolith was like a miniature sun at this moment. Soon after, the dazzling glow disappeared along with the gigantic monolith itself. After the 7 Luminaries mountain collapsed, a bottomless pit appeared in its place. The pit was just like a black hole, devouring everything that entered it. At the deepest reaches of this bottomless pit, there was actually a boundless aura of destruction, and any object that came into contact with this pressure instantly turned into ash. Surprisingly, Shifeng felt signs of life at the very bottom of this immeasurably deep pit, and his entire body instinctively shuddered at this discovery. "Guild leader, did we do something bad?" Fire Dance asked Shifeng in a careful tone. She too could feel the immensely frightening pressure that came from the bottomless pit. I don't know either, Shifeng said, a bitter smile on his face. At this moment, a notification from the system sounded. System, unique quest Miracles Unsealed completed. Quest rewards, 1 million EXP, 40 free attribute points and 40 free mastery points. System, the Endless Abyss has come into existence. Activating new expansion pack, The Great Catastrophe. System, legendary ranked main storyline quest, 7 treasures, activated. Quest details, the Endless Abyss has already opened. You are required to immediately notify the War God's Temple in order to have them reseal the Endless Abyss. After reading these notifications, Shifeng finally had an inkling of what was going on. Inadvertently, they had actually opened the door of taboos. According to Shifeng's memories, the new expansion pack, The Great Catastrophe, had only appeared 3 months after God's Domain's launch in his previous life. Now, however, because of him, The Great Catastrophe had appeared in advance. Chapter 279, Quality over Quantity. When Aqua Rose and Fire Dance read the notifications they received, both of them were immediately sent into a daze. A legendary quest. Moreover, it was a main storyline quest, a quest that was capable of changing the history of God's domain. The reward for such a quest would definitely be luxuriant. According to rumors, the minimum reward for completing an epic quest was an epic ranked item, or an item of equivalent value. In other words, if they completed a legendary quest, then the minimum reward they could obtain would be a legendary ranked item. They had never even seen an epic ranked item before, much less a legendary ranked item. It could definitely become the symbol of the guild. However, when the two of them thought about how they were required to seal this endless abyss, they sank into deep despair. The return scrolls are usable now. Let's leave this place then. Shifeng's memories of the new expansion pack, The Great Catastrophe, were still fresh in his mind. After the Great Catastrophe occurred, the monsters throughout God's domain started becoming restless. Towns, especially, would randomly come under attack from demonic beasts, resulting in chaos. According to Shifeng's memories, some of the weaker border towns had even been conquered by the demonic beasts, turning those into demonic beast towns. Among the biggest changes made to the game were to the knights in God's domain. After the new pack was implemented, the number of monsters that would appear during nighttime was much higher than before. Moreover, monsters corrupted by the Endless Abyss would also appear. These corrupted monsters would all be transformed into demonic beasts, and even the weakest of demonic beasts were Tier 1 monsters. Which was to say, if players had still not received their promotion into a Tier 1 class, it would be tremendously difficult for them to fight against these monsters. Instead of being the ones doing the killing, players would have a much higher chance of getting killed by these demonic beasts. Hence, after the new expansion pack, players would find it very difficult to grind and level up during nighttime. In contrast to the shock Aqua Rose and Fire Dance felt, the revelation of the new pack caused a sensation throughout the entire Star Moon Kingdom. Players could not help but feel excited after finding out about the Great Catastrophe expansion pack. The official developers of the game had already revealed information about this new expansion pack. In the future, demonic beasts would randomly launch assaults on towns, and in response to such attacks, towns would issue defense quests to players. As long as players managed to defend the town, they would receive bountiful rewards. Of these rewards, there would even be secret silver-ranked items and many more valuable items. In addition, players would also receive city reputation from completing the defense quest. These defense quests would undeniably allow average players to quickly improve themselves, hence the excitement of many of the average players over the arrival of this new expansion pack. Meanwhile, the atmosphere in White River City had also suddenly cooled down, as many players had chosen to head out to the towns instead. They intended to grind for some levels while they awaited for a demonic beast assault to occur. If luck would have it, they might even happen upon a demonic beast assault, making a huge profit from completing the resultant defense quest. Guild leader, should we arrange for a few members to head towards various towns and keep an eye out for a demonic beast assault? Aqua Rose suggested, her brows wrinkled slightly when she looked at the deserted streets of White River City. The other guilds were currently busying themselves with raiding the 3 great dungeons. They definitely would not have the time to pay attention to these demonic beast assaults. Hence, this was a good chance for Zero Wing to shine. Let's not participate in the demonic beast assaults. Focus on leveling up. Level 20 is the time when our guild will shine. Shi Feng shook his head, a knowing smile on his face. In the past, Shi Feng had experienced many assaults launched by demonic beasts. Hence, he knew very well how difficult it was to actually receive the reward of a defense quest. The reason being, even the weakest demonic beast was a Tier 1 monster. They would all be level 30 or above. Shi Feng had even once encountered a Tier 3 demonic beast during an assault. If they were to try and defend a town right now, it would simply be suicide. Naturally, Shi Feng would not let the members of his guild die a pointless death. One could say that towns were extremely dangerous locations right now. If players were to truly meet with a demonic beast assault, then it was not luck but fate. Currently, the safest places in God's domain were cities, since there would be high-tier NPCs guarding them. Take White River City for example. There were 3 Tier 4 NPCs guarding it, so demonic beasts would not dare to casually approach the city itself. If we don't participate and make some achievements, many more of the remaining members might choose to withdraw from the guild. Aqua Rose could not understand what was going through Shi Feng's mind. Before, they had given up on competing over the 3 great dungeons. Now, they were also going to give up such a good chance to earn precious equipment and reputation. Just what were they supposed to do? Let them leave then. Our guild is only capable of handling 3,000 members right now, and we are still well above that number. It would be even better if they do leave. Shi Feng smiled without care. What Shi Feng was trying to pursue was quality, not quantity. God's domain was a game, and the resources available to players were limited. Meanwhile, the more members they had in the guild, the more resources the guild needed to spend. However, if the resources available in the guild only amounted to so much, having more members in the guild would mean that each member would receive less resources. As a result, their development speed would also fall. In the past, Shadow had conducted a mass recruitment of players, recruiting all kinds of players into the guild. In the end, the guild had bitten off more than it could chew, causing its development to slow to a crawl. In this life, Shi Feng would not repeat the same mistakes Shadow made in the past. The members in the guild could just leave for all he cared. He definitely would not try to stop them from leaving. Talent was very important if one wished to become an expert in God's domain. However, truly talented people were limited. In the past, a majority of the experts in God's domain had participated in one battle after another, gradually learning and accumulating the experience needed to become an expert, instead of relying on talent. Instead of cultivating some two-faced talented guild members, Shi Feng would rather invest his resources in nurturing normal but loyal guild members. In the past, a super guild called Black Tower had sent over 200,000 of their members to attack a second-rate guild called Solitary Rulers. Meanwhile, Solitary Rulers had less than 80,000 members in total. The guild was believed to have the fewest members among all second-rate guilds. Before the battle between the two guilds had even started, everyone had already expected Black Tower to easily obtain victory. However, the end result was far from what others had imagined it to be. Although both guilds clashed tens of times, Black Tower hadn't succeeded in destroying the city governed by Solitary Rulers. While more than 30,000 members of Solitary Rulers had died in that battle, Black Tower had lost more than 3 times that number, with over 100,000 members of Black Tower dying. Black Tower suffered a tremendous loss after that battle, greatly shocking the other guilds that were watching from the sidelines. In the end, Black Tower had no choice but to mobilize its 7 Tier 5 Saint rank players and one of its Tier 6 God rank players to destroy Solitary Rulers. However, every member of Solitary Rulers still fought to the bloody end, fighting tooth and nail against their eventual demise. Before they lost their city, they had even managed to kill 2 of the Saint rank players and another 100,000 or so Black Tower members. In the subsequent clashes between the two guilds, Solitary Rulers had suffered one defeat after another. After all, the Tier 6 God rank expert and 7 Tier 5 Saint rank experts were simply too powerful. As a result, Solitary Rulers lost 5 of the cities they governed in quick succession. By the time the battlefield moved to Solitary Rulers' final base of operations, Unparalleled City, amazingly, not a single member had chosen to withdraw from the guild. Even after dying tens of times, they still chose to charge head-on into the battlefield. Shi Feng couldn't help but shiver every time he recalled the unyielding attitude of those iron-blooded souls. Clearly, the difference in strength between the two guilds was like heaven and earth. Yet, instead of giving up and accepting their fates, every single member of Solitary Rulers had chosen to brave the battlefield. It was also due to this reason that Black Tower had suffered such immense losses. If it were any other guild standing in solitary ruler's place, the members would have long since abandoned hope and quit the guild. They would not have chosen to fight at all. While Black Tower was in the midst of conquering solitary ruler's final city, however, another super guild had attempted to take advantage of the situation and laid siege to Black Tower's cities. As a result, Black Tower had no choice but to give up their plan of completely annihilating solitary rulers. Meanwhile, solitary rulers had instantly risen to fame after this conflict, becoming the role model of all second-rate and third-rate guilds. Aside from solitary rulers as an example of quality over quantity, there was also the adventurer team that was known throughout the entire God's domain, the Midnight Tea Party. Although its members numbered less than 30, not even super guilds dared to cross it. In God's domain, although quantity was important, quality was even more important. I understand. Looking at Shifeng's determined expression, Aqua Rose had no better choice but to concede to his decision. It was indeed like Shifeng had said, there were too many members in the guild. The current member count far exceeded their range of tolerance. By having those unfaithful members leave, they could also lay a good foundation for their guild's future. Another reason why Aqua Rose had agreed to Shifeng's decision was mainly because of the guild residents. Once they revealed their guild residents to the public, there would be no shortage of players wanting to join their guild. If they did not possess the guild residents, Aqua Rose definitely would not have agreed to such a self-destructive course. After Aqua Rose went on her own way, Shifeng headed to the Adventurers Guild. Now that the Great Catastrophe expansion pack had been activated, he needed to quickly handle the matters concerning the guild residents. Chapter 280 Zero Wing Residents. Currently, the interior of the Adventurers Association of White River City was filled with players coming and going. Most of these players were here to accept or hand in their daily quests. However, there were insufficient NPCs to cater to the large number of players. As a result, these players usually needed to wait in the lounge for a period of time before they could accept or turn in their quests. Having nothing better to do inside the lounge, some guild players started ordering alcohol and holding a discussion among themselves. Zero Wing is getting worse by the day. If I had known this would happen earlier, I would have definitely joined some other large guild to develop myself. Perhaps I might have already become the leader of a party by now. Brother Hui, as expected, you are still the smarter and wiser one. You joined Dark Star from the very start and now you've already become the vice leader of a 15-man team. Now that I have left Zero Wing, I will be relying on Brother Huey's guidance from now on. A shield warrior with tan skin flattered the robust-looking berserker sitting beside him. No problem. With me around, you will definitely have no problem joining the guild, the berserker assured him, clapping his chest. Meanwhile, sitting beside this berserker addressed as Brother Hui was a pretty female mage. Although her face looked average, she had an excellent figure. Coquettishly fluttering her eyelashes, the female mage looked at the person known as Brother Hui, sweetly saying, "Big Brother Hui, I've been wanting to go to the level 15 Wind Ridge. When will you take me there?" Wind Ridge was a level 15 20-man team dungeon. Among level 15 team dungeons, Wind Ridge had a below-average difficulty. However, to average players at this stage of the game, even a level 15 10-man team dungeon was a great challenge, not to mention a 20-man dungeon like Wind Ridge. Of course. Isn't it just Wind Ridge? You're already my woman now, how could you settle for only a meager Wind Ridge? Tomorrow, I'll call up my men and bring you to the demon's castle. The berserker wrapped his arm around the female mage's willowy waist, a nasty grin on his face. Many onlookers grew envious at this scene. They could not help but wish that they too could join Dark Star in getting a beauty for themselves as well. Brother Hui, I hear that the demon's castle has a very high difficulty. Don't tell me you've already managed to obtain the raid strategy from Zero Wing's main force? The tan shield warrior asked curiously. Indeed, we've managed to obtain the strategy already. However, even without it, with Dark Star's strength, we could still easily conquer the demon's castle. The main reason we haven't done so is simply because of the competition we're having with Ouroboros. Otherwise, Zero Wing would not have had the chance to take the limelight as they did before. Look, isn't Zero Wing in shambles now? They're simply a little faster in terms of leveling up. They haven't even cleared the normal mode of any of the 3 great dungeons yet. Dark Star, on the other hand, has already killed the second boss of hard mode and started trying to raid the third boss. We have already caught up with Ouroboros. It is only a matter of time before we surpass Ouroboros. I really don't know what qualifications Zero Wing possesses to be considered as one of the top 6 guilds in White River City. The Berserker's loud voice was filled with disdain as he spoke of Zero Wing. Even though the guild clearly has no future, there is still more than half the original number of players remaining in it. It really makes you wonder just what is going through those people's minds. They're just fools. Brother Hui, you're right. I really regret listening to my friend's words about joining Zero Wing back then. The shield warrior nodded his head in agreement, his heart filled with great disappointment. If he had joined Dark Star early on, he might also have had a beauty accompanying him by now. Meanwhile, seated near this trio, Shifeng was currently quietly browsing through information on the official forums. Naturally, he could clearly hear the loud conversation between the robust berserker and the skinny shield warrior, and the same went for everyone else waiting inside the lounge. However, Shifeng made no comment on their mocking words. After all, everyone had the freedom to make their own decisions. As for the shield warrior's regret at joining Zero Wing, Shifeng simply revealed a calm smile. If this shield warrior knew that Zero Wing was about to establish their very own guild residence, just what sort of emotions would he have? At that time, even the words, earth-shattering, would not be enough to describe the amount of shock he would feel. However, Shifeng really could not be blamed for this. Soon after, Shifeng headed to the counter and dealt with all the necessary procedures. After he turned his private territory into a guild residence, he also spent 3,000 gold to build an advanced guild hall in place of the Purple Sun Mansion. The advanced guild hall could fit up to 3,000 people. As for the other facilities of the guild residence, those would only be obtainable from large-scale team dungeons that were level 25 or above. Some time was needed before the construction of the advanced guild hall could be completed. After Shifeng completed all the necessary procedures, his remaining task was to head to the War God's Temple and report the matter of the Endless Abyss. Just as Shifeng was about to leave the Adventurers Association, the system notification sounded. Moreover, this wasn't just any normal notification. Instead, it was a notification sent to the entire Starmoon Kingdom. Starmoon Kingdom System Announcement. Congratulations to Zero Wing for becoming the first guild in Starmoon Kingdom to establish a guild residence. Rewarding 10,000 guild reputation, 10,000 guild popularity and 10 gold coins to the guild. I spent 3,000 gold, yet only got 10 gold in return. The system sure is tight-fisted. Shifeng laughed. However, Shifeng did not concern himself with such an amount of gold. The reason being, in these past few days, the Starstreak trading firm was already making a daily profit of over 1,700 gold. It was all thanks to the popularity it gained from selling the Arclight Shield, as well as the basic mana armor kits. During this period of time, the forging genius, Cream Cocoa, had also been continuously producing gemstone buckles, advanced whetstones and many more forging products. Moreover, the number of forging players Melancholic Smile recruited was also rising. Not only did the combination of these new forgers and the various forging designs provided by Zero Wing increase the number of products sold by the Starstreak trading firm, it also expanded the company's product selection. As a result, the daily profits of the Starstreak trading firm continuously rose. Currently, the Starstreak trading firm already controlled over half of the market for forging products in White River City. Moreover, such a situation wasn't limited to just White River City, it extended to the 7 surrounding cities. Hence, Shifeng was not lacking in money at all. Compared to having spent 3,000 gold coins, Shifeng was more interested in the 10,000 guild popularity points. This was a feature that would only become available to a guild after it established a guild residence. The higher the guild popularity, the more famous a guild would become among NPCs. With 10,000 guild popularity, Zero Wing could be considered relatively famous among the NPC populace. Compared to starting from scratch, having this 10,000 guild popularity made things much simpler for him. It should be known that, when a guild member completed a quest commissioned by an NPC, the guild would normally receive only 1 to 3 guild popularity. Only quests with high difficulty would reward 5 to 10 points. In other words, a guild needed to complete thousands of guild quests in order to accumulate 10,000 guild popularity. These bonus guild popularity points had saved the guild plenty of development time. Meanwhile, inside the lounge of the Adventurers Association, the tan shield warrior that had just recently left Zero Wing no longer felt joyful about joining Dark Star. On the contrary, his face was as pale as a sheet of paper. Inside the Land of Death, one of the three great dungeons. Dark Star's main team was currently battling against a white-bone giant elephant, which was over 20 meters in height. At this time, the MT of the team, Lone Tyrant, was enduring the attacks from this white-bone giant elephant. Every time he took an attack from the boss, he would receive over -2000 damage. His HP constantly rose and fell, his life hanging by a thread. Just as the white-bone giant elephant in the distance was preparing to charge, Lone Tyrant suddenly received a system notification. Lone Tyrant was momentarily stunned by what he saw. How did Zero Wing obtain a guild residence so quickly? Lone Tyrant couldn't help but yell out when he saw the description of this system notification, his eyes nearly popping out of their sockets. He even forgot to use a skill to block the incoming attack from the white-bone giant elephant before him. As a result, he was turned into a pile of meat paste by the boss's foot, losing his life instantly. What followed was what would be expected, a team wipe. Chapter 281, A Guild's Most Powerful Weapon. Tens of players were currently lining up outside a large and peaceful tomb. Everyone in this team of players was level 17 or above, and all of their equipment were at least mysterious iron rank with a few pieces of secret silver equipment mixed in. Most of the equipment the leading MT of this team had were of secret silver rank, and the crescent-shaped shield he carried was even of fine gold rank. Meanwhile, all of these well-equipped players were looking reverently at the peerless beauty standing before them. Looking out through the gaps of her silver-white helmet, her black, crystalline eyes shone with both intelligence and wisdom. Her hair, which was a midnight black, hung down to her waist, gently brushing against the silver-white armor she wore. Resting her hand on the hilt of a dark blue greatsword glowing dark blue, she exuded the indomitable aura of a goddess of war as she silently stood there. This peerless war goddess was none other than the snow goddess of Ouroboros, Gentle Snow. After undergoing the baptism of the three great dungeons, Gentle Snow was even more dazzling than before. She was like a rough stone that had been polished, instantly revealing the sparkle of an icy cold sapphire. Currently, not only was Gentle Snow fully equipped with the Snowfall set equipment, a secret silver ranked set equipment, the greatsword she wielded, albeit of indiscernible quality, was also giving off a frightening amount of energy. The Snowfall set equipment could only be obtained from the hard mode of the three great dungeons. As for the blue sky greatsword Gentle Snow wielded, she had obtained it after killing a great lord that served as a protector of a ruined temple. If Shifeng saw this two-handed greatsword, he would definitely be shocked. The reason being, this greatsword was similar to the Abyssal Blade since it too was a magic weapon. Furthermore, it was also one of the 36 famed swords of God's domain, Blue Sky. Just as Gentle Snow's team was about to raid the fourth boss of the Land of Death, the White-Bone General Jera, Gentle Snow suddenly received a system notification, and a hint of astonishment flashed through her eyes when she read its contents. How can he be so fast? Gentle Snow knew exactly how difficult it was to obtain a guild residence. Even though she had a powerful guild like Ouroboros, the #1 guild in White River City, backing her, the reputation she had collected was still far from enough to allow her to become a Baroness of White River City. Yet, Zero Wing was still a step ahead of her. Gentle Snow's lips suddenly curled into a faint smile as she muttered, "It seems I need to congratulate him." In White River City, Ouroboros and Zero Wing were actually allies, although this matter was not known to the public. If people did find out, however, they would definitely be greatly shocked. After all, who would ever imagine that White River City's #1 guild would actually be willing to form an alliance with Zero Wing, a guild that was declining by the day? However, Gentle Snow had indeed done such a thing. Although Ouroboros was the #1 guild in White River City, they were still far from being considered an unshakable existence. Just the fact that Dark Star was close to surpassing them showed how vulnerable Ouroboros was. Moreover, Dark Star also had some hidden connections with world dominators, which was also a first-rate guild like Ouroboros. If these two powerful guilds joined hands to wage war against Ouroboros, then Ouroboros would definitely suffer a huge loss. Hence, Ouroboros itself needed allies. Setting aside Dark Star and world dominators, there were still 3 others among the top 6 guilds in White River City. Of the 3, the most powerful would be Emperor's Light, a first-rate guild, while coming in second would be the Assassin's Alliance, a second-rate guild. As for Zero Wing, they were considered the weakest of the top 6 guilds in White River City. Yet in defiance of all logic, Gentle Snow had chosen to ally herself with the recently established Zero Wing, out of these three guilds. The reason for her decision was her optimism for Zero Wing. Setting aside the mysterious, elusive and heaven-defyingly powerful Yifeng, just the fact that Zero Wing had Black Flame in its midst had already solidified Gentle Snow's conviction. Not only was Black Flame the publicly acknowledged chief forger of Starmoon Kingdom, his personal combat strength was also frighteningly great. In addition, he had a mysterious organization supporting him from behind the scenes, not to mention a deep connection with the Starstreak trading firm. Black Flame's shocking financial power put even Gentle Snow herself to shame. Although she could not make head or tail of the connection between Yifeng and Black Flame, she knew for a fact that both of them possessed immeasurable strength. Yet, despite being so powerful, neither of them chose to reveal that strength to the public, and such an action greatly confused Gentle Snow. Just the thought of the two of them working together had sent chills down Gentle Snow's spine. As if to put icing on the cake, the person named Aqua Rose had also appeared in Zero Wing out of nowhere. Aqua Rose used to be an honorary elder of Twilight Echo. Although her fame was less than Gentle Snow's, that was only because Gentle Snow had appeared in many advertisements before, raising her profile in the public eye. Gentle Snow had never personally fought against Aqua Rose. However, based on the video recordings of Aqua Rose's battles, in terms of combat techniques, should they ever have a fight between themselves, Gentle Snow felt she only had a 50% chance of emerging victorious. In any case, just the presence of these three powerhouses in Zero Wing made it worthwhile for Gentle Snow to ally herself with them. Not to mention, Zero Wing still had many other experts within their ranks. Their true strength and potential were simply unfathomable. In the eyes of the public, Zero Wing would sooner or later vanish from existence. However, Gentle Snow knew very clearly, Zero Wing's current calm was merely the prelude to their next breakout. The situation right now would be the best example. Against all expectations, Zero Wing had suddenly become the first guild in Starmoon Kingdom to obtain its own guild residence, miles ahead of the other guilds. Within moments, Zero Wing had become the focal point of all players throughout Starmoon Kingdom. Shortly after the appearance of the system notification, Zero Wing's recruitment point was overrun by a stampede of players. Although Aqua Rose had long since prepared for such a reaction, the sea of players desperately trying to join the guild still left her breathless. Meanwhile, the players who had previously withdrawn from Zero Wing presently had regret filling up their intestines. If they had not acted so impulsively and had waited just a few more days, they would have been able to enjoy the various benefits offered by a guild residence. Now, unless they deleted their game accounts and started over with a new name, it was impossible for them to join Zero Wing anymore. However, who would have the courage to actually delete their account and start all over again? As for the players that had chosen to remain in Zero Wing currently, they were extremely happy about their wise decision. Now that Zero Wing had a guild residence, not to mention being able to receive more quests, they could save a lot of money, thanks to the equipment and weapons repair facility of the guild residence. Neither would they need to spend money to recover their stamina at hotels, they could simply do so at the guild residence. Furthermore, they could also obtain a double EXP buff just by resting inside the guild residence. With this buff, they could grind and level up with much greater efficiency than before. In addition, guild residences could also provide private rooms. This was also the greatest benefit of having a guild residence. In God's domain, every player would wish to possess their very own private room or house. As long as players logged off inside their own rooms, they could still accumulate the double EXP buff, and with much greater efficiency than in the guild lounge to boot, even though they weren't personally within the game. Normally, when guild members rested within the guild residence's guild lounge for 48 hours, they could accumulate 20% double EXP, and they could accumulate up to 1 level's worth of double EXP. In the case of a private room, however, players only needed to rest for 24 hours in order to accumulate 20% double EXP, and they could likewise accumulate up to 1 level's worth of double EXP. Although the maximum capacity of the buff was the same, the accumulation speed inside a private room was double that of the guild lounge. Of course, this was only in the case of a 1-star private housing. In God's domain, housing was also categorized into different levels. Meanwhile, the higher the level, the greater the benefits a player could enjoy. The lowest level housing was 1 star, while the highest was 10 star. Each increase in level required a huge sum of money, and also certain special materials. It would not be easy for players to upgrade their private housings. For a 1-star private housing, every 24 hours, players could accumulate 20% double EXP, up to a maximum of 1 level's worth of double EXP. For a 2-star private housing, every 24 hours, players could accumulate 25% double EXP, up to a maximum of 1 level's worth of double EXP. For a 7-star private housing, every 24 hours, players could accumulate 50% double EXP, up to a maximum of 1 level's worth of double EXP. In addition, players would also receive a Vigor increased buff, increasing all attributes by 5% for 2 hours. For a 8-star private housing, every 24 hours, players could accumulate 50% triple EXP, up to a maximum of 5 levels worth of triple EXP. In addition, players would also receive a Vigor increased buff, increasing all attributes by 5% for 3 hours. For a 9-star private housing, every 24 hours, players could accumulate 50% triple EXP, up to a maximum of 2 levels worth of triple EXP. In addition, players would also receive a Vigor increased buff, increasing all attributes by 8% for 3 hours. For a 10-star private housing, every 24 hours, players could accumulate 50% triple EXP, up to a maximum of 3 levels worth of triple EXP. In addition, players would also receive a Vigor increased buff, increasing all attributes by 10% for 4 hours. However, it was simply too difficult for players to obtain their own houses in White River City. Yet, buying a house in a town would not be convenient for them. Meanwhile, guild residences could provide its members with private rooms, although not everyone could enjoy the benefits of a private room, due to limited space inside a guild residence. Normally, these private rooms would be given to members who contributed greatly to the guild and also the upper management of the guild. If there were any additional private rooms, guild members could also rent them using the contribution points they accumulated from raiding dungeons and doing quests. In God's domain, the matter of leveling up would always be a headache to players. Moreover, the further into the game a player went, the harder it was for them to level up. It would not be strange for players to level up only once every 3 to 4 days. If players died out in the fields, they would also lose an entire level as a penalty. Hence, a tool that could aid players in leveling up quicker would definitely be well received. This guild benefit alone already held a fatal attraction for all players. And that was in addition to the large number of guild quests available for choosing, which would dramatically accelerate players' leveling speed. Chapter 282, Dark Wind. The War God's Temple, an organization that was founded shortly after the Great Destruction, had been in existence for thousands of years now, protecting the human race from invasions by foreign races. Now that the Endless Abyss had been opened, the humans of God's domain would have to rely on the War God's Temple to deal with the invasion of demonic beasts. It was no longer a situation that could be handled by any single country. Aside from being the protector of the human race, the War God's Temple was also a location for players to learn advanced skills. Meanwhile, players only needed to complete the quests they received at the War God's Temple in order to do so. Shortly after Shi Feng arrived at the War God's Temple, he reported the Endless Abyss to the Knight Captain on duty. The War God's Temple was considered one of the most powerful forces in God's domain. Just a normal knight here was already a level 180 tier 2 NPC. As for the Knight Captain, he was a level 200 tier 3 NPC. The Knight Captain revealed an anxious expression after hearing Shi Feng's report. "Your Excellency Black Flame, this matter is of utmost importance. However, as I'll need to immediately send out warnings to all cities throughout the kingdom and also muster troops to the front lines, I'll have to trouble you to head to the War God's Temple in the capital city and report this matter to Lord Eucharis and seek his aid." The Knight Captain passed a gold token to Shi Feng, then promptly headed out of the temple, not giving Shi Feng any chance to even refuse. Shi Feng was left speechless by the Knight Captain's words. Fortunately, he only needed to head to the capital city and look for the person named Eucharis, an easy task to accomplish. Following which, Shi Feng left the War God's Temple and hurried over to White River City's teleportation hall. Just as Shi Feng was about to enter the teleportation hall, however, 6 robust-looking players stood in front of the stone staircase, completely blocking the entryway. These 6 players were all level 18. Such a level could definitely be ranked at the very top of White River City. Moreover, the equipment these players wore were of excellent quality, majority of which were of secret silver rank. Meanwhile, the solemn-looking middle-aged man who looked like the leader of this party of players had the best equipment out of these 6 players. He was actually fully equipped with secret silver equipment. His gaze was like a sharp blade, and his entire body exuded such an icy cold aura that other players unconsciously detoured as they walked past him. Although Shifeng had never fought against these 6 players before, he could clearly tell that they were very strong. There were very few parties of their caliber in White River City. Meanwhile, pinned to the chests of these players were black 6-pointed stars. This black star was none other than Dark Star's guild emblem. "What can I do for you?" Shifeng asked. "You're Black Flame, right? I am Ming Sha of Underworld. I am here to give you a piece of good news," the middle-aged man said in a condescending tone. Although Black Flame had been titled as the chief forger of Star Moon Kingdom, in Ming Sha's eyes, he was merely a clown prancing on the stage. Whether it was in reality or in God's domain, only strength truly mattered. A forger that only knew how to stay hidden inside a room was nothing more than a tool for strong players like them. If not for the matter of the guild residents astonishing the upper echelons of Underworld, Ming Sha would not even be here trying to make contact with Black Flame. Instead of Black Flame, the person Ming Sha was interested in was Yi Feng, the player widely acclaimed a god-ranked swordsman. Ming Sha really wished to meet him. Moreover, young Master Feng had also given orders to get rid of that Yi Feng and obtain the epic-ranked item in Shifeng's hands. Unfortunately, Yi Feng proved simply too elusive. No matter how many men Ming Sha had sent out, they still could not find a trace of that Yi Feng. Ming Sha was very disappointed by such a result, as he never imagined that Yi Feng would be such a coward, not having the courage to even come out and fight. Good news? Then why do I feel that you guys are coming with bad intentions in hand? Shifeng revealed an indifferent smile as he sent a glance at the other 5 menacing players. "Master Black Flame, it is our fault for behaving too rashly. However, we truly do have great news for you. Only, I hope that you can take a trip with us. After all, this place isn't exactly suitable for discussions of such an important matter." At this moment, another person walked up from behind the 6 players. This person was similarly a middle-aged man. Currently, this man had a wide smile on his honest-looking face. When Shifeng used observing eyes on this man, he discovered that this man was actually called South Wolf. Immediately, Shifeng came to a realization. The road for enemies truly is narrow. Shifeng inwardly chuckled. South Wolf was none other than the person that tried to threaten Shifeng into surrendering his ice blue devil flame. After being rejected, South Wolf had even declared that he would take action against Shifeng. Originally, Shifeng had intended to take a look at just how powerful the organization known as Underworld was. Unfortunately, this matter had been quelled by gentle snow. Shifeng never thought he would meet this fellow once again today. "What if I don't want to go?" Shifeng asked. "We have long since thought of this point, hence I asked Brother Ming Sha and his friends to come and personally invite Master Black Flame over," South Wolf said with a hypocritical smile, sending a glance at the 6 underworld guards beside him. "Alright then, since you guys are being so sincere." Shifeng nodded. South Wolf had obviously already familiarized himself with the rules of White River City. Although the rules stated that battles were not allowed within the city limits, that was on the premise that actual damage was caused. There would be no problems if they simply dragged him away. Of course, Shifeng's strength attribute was extremely high. South Wolf's group had absolutely no chance of abducting him. Just recently, he had obtained 40 free attribute points as a reward for releasing the Forgotten Lance. Although Shifeng had added 30 of those points into intelligence, in order to equip the Heavenly Dragon's Breath even a little earlier, he had placed the remaining 10 into strength. Aside from that, due to the Abyssal Blade's attributes, Shifeng obtained 2 additional free attribute points every time he leveled up. When coupling those with the strength provided by his other equipment, Shifeng's strength attribute had long since broken through the 170-point threshold. In terms of the strength attribute, very few players throughout God's domain could be a match for him. However, it seemed that someone from the mysterious upper echelon of Underworld wanted to meet him, and Shifeng was curious enough to agree. "Let us go then," South Wolf said as he led the way. A short while later, Shifeng and the others arrived inside a high-class bar. Very few average players could be seen inside this bar, as most could not afford this luxurious place. "Master Black Flame, please come in. Young Master Feng has been waiting for you for a long time now." South Wolf pushed apart the doors to a private room, hinting that Shifeng should enter. Upon entering the private room, Feng immediately discovered an imposing yet charming youth sitting inside. This youth was also accompanied by two beautiful female companions at his sides. These two beauties were not players but NPCs. Just like how Anna was working as Feng's assistant at the Starstreak trading firm, these beauties were clearly servants of this young man. This sight was far more shocking than if he had two attractive female players accompanying him. At this stage of the game, having the ability to possess two NPC servants showed that this youth before him was definitely out of the ordinary. "You are in the upper echelon of Underworld?" Feng asked. "That's right. This one here is known as Feng Xianyang, the vice leader of Underworld Starmoon Kingdom Eastern Branch. Of course you can also call me by my character name Dark Wind." Feng Xianyang introduced himself. "I wonder what business does Vice Leader Feng have with me?" Feng asked. Judging from Feng Xianyang's tone, Feng had already made a rough guess as to Underworld's strength. Although he had long since deduced that Underworld had a great deal of power and that their influence covered more than just a single kingdom, Feng still could not help but feel shocked after having his conclusions confirmed. It was no wonder even that Gentle Snow was wary of them. Starmoon Kingdom could be categorized into 5 separate regions: North, South, East, West, and Center. White River City was located in the east side. Meanwhile, Feng Xianyang was in charge of managing the affairs of Underworld Starmoon Kingdom Eastern Branch. The authority he wielded was definitely great. "I heard that Master Black Flame is the founder of Zero Wing. You have even managed to elevate Zero Wing to its current position. We at Underworld feel very optimistic about Zero Wing's future. Hence we wish to invest in some shares." Feng Xianyang then pointed towards Ming Sha, who was currently standing by the door, saying, "You've already seen for yourself the strength of Underworld. Because of us, even the previously insignificant third-rate guild Dark Star has instantly become a powerhouse in White River City. If Master Black Flame is willing, Underworld can similarly make Zero Wing grow rapidly. Not only could you become the overlord of White River City, you could even become the #1 guild in the entire eastern region of Starmoon Kingdom. I wonder if Master Black Flame might be interested?" Chapter 283, Arrogance. Feng Xianyang's words dripped with temptation. Just the prestige of being the #1 guild in the entire eastern region of Starmoon Kingdom would cause many to fight over it. These exact same words might have been used to attract Lone Tyrant into cooperating with Underworld back then. Under the banner of the #1 player on the ranking list, in addition to Underworld's covert support, Dark Star had managed to rocket to fame, becoming a guild capable of rivaling even the powerful Ouroboros. So that's how it is. Feng suddenly came to a realization. He finally understood why Dark Star could become so amazing, just like that, with experts appearing in the guild out of nowhere. Its abrupt rise was all because of Underworld helping it in secret. However, now that Zero Wing had established a guild residence, Underworld couldn't help but reconsider its original plans, hence its interest in investing in Zero Wing. Feng couldn't help but acknowledge that Underworld was indeed amazing. They were willing to support an entirely different guild even at the cost of sacrificing all their previous investments. From an outsider's perspective, such an action was plain foolish. However, Feng knew that Underworld's decision was in fact very wise. It was obvious at first glance how great an influence a guild residence would have towards a guild's success. If it were up to him, he too would choose to take such an action. "Master Black Flame, you should know that there are over 20 cities just in Starmoon Kingdom's eastern region alone. If Master Black Flame agrees to our proposition, in the future, you will become the absolute overlord of these 20+ cities. Moreover, even though Underworld will be investing in Zero Wing, we will not interfere directly in the management of the guild itself. Rather, we will provide you with a large sum in funding and manpower," Feng Xianyang slowly said in a tempting tone. "We at Underworld have already decided that as long as Master Black Flame agrees, we will immediately inject 1 billion credits into Zero Wing, and also provide the guild with 100 gold coins every week. In addition, we will also provide 100 experts and also 1 team of Underworld guards for you, Master Black Flame, to command as you see fit. If Zero Wing develops well, Underworld will invest even more into the guild in the future. Master Black Flame, what do you think?" Feng Xianyang had taken Feng's previous silence for hesitation, thinking that Feng was definitely considering his proposition, hence he sweetened the deal. In God's domain, wasn't the main purpose one established a guild earning money and gaining status. For a newly established guild, 1 billion credits was definitely an astronomical sum. Even a major corporation in a city couldn't easily take out 1 billion credits. Recently, due to God's Domain's raging popularity, the number of corporations investing in the game had been continuously increasing. The value of guilds in God's Domain had similarly shot up abruptly. Yet even so, a third-rate guild with a member count of 20 to 30,000 would, at most, be worth 2 to 300 million credits. Meanwhile, Zero Wing merely had several thousand members in its ranks. Although it had both fame and experts, its value was still not worth 1 billion credits. After taking into account the value of a guild residence, Zero Wing would at most be worth 500 million credits. Hence, it would be completely illogical for Shi Feng to refuse the offer of 1 billion credits. I wonder how much shares young Master Feng is intending to purchase? Shi Feng asked, an indifferent smile on his face. Not much, just 50%. In exchange for 50% of Zero Wing's shares, you can obtain 1 billion credits in addition to having many experts to assist you. I believe that no other corporation will be willing to offer such a high price, Feng Xianyang said confidently. Shi Feng propped up his chin with his hand, entering into a deep contemplation. Shortly after, he slowly said, although your offer is indeed attractive, 50% of the guild shares is simply too much. I am willing to sell 10% at most. Although Feng Xuanyang's offer of 50% seemed as if both sides would be wielding half of the guild shares, it was simply a trick to make Shi Feng drop his guard. In reality, wielding 50% of Zero Wing's shares was already tantamount to full control of the guild. After all, when Shi Feng established his guild, he hadn't claimed the full 100% shares of the guild. He had given a small portion to Aqua Rose. If Feng Xianyang purchased 1% of Zero Wing's shares from Aqua Rose, then he would have 51% of the guild's shares. At that time, Feng Xuanyang's words would become law in Zero Wing, while Shi Feng would sooner or later end up in a situation like the one in his previous life. Shi Feng had sworn to never let something like that happen again in this life. 10%. Feng Xianyang did not dare believe his own ears. He was going to spend 1 billion credits on Zero Wing, yet all he would get in return was 10% of its shares? Did Shi Feng really take Zero Wing for the number 1 guild in Star Moon Kingdom? Vice Leader Feng, you must think that the amount I'm offering is too low, right? Shi Feng asked, his indifferent smile still on his face. It's only normal that you would think so. However, what I'm trying to say is that 1 billion credits really isn't a big sum of money. I'm already giving young Master Feng a lot of face by offering you 10% of Zero Wing's shares. If it were anyone else here today, I would only offer them 1% at most. In fact, Shi Feng was not speaking conceited nonsense at all. Just the gold coins he had on hand right now already exceeded 10,000. If he converted them into credits, they would be worth at least 200 million credits. His daily income was also continuously rising day after day. Just the benefits he could obtain from the Starstreak trading firm had already far exceeded 1 billion credits. Not to mention, Zero Wing's guild residence was also built on a strategic location like the Purple Sun Mansion. The Purple Sun Mansion was the best location for players to establish a guild residence in White River City. It also occupied a broad tract of land, larger than even a football field, which could contain 50,000 people. Not to mention the current state of White River City, where every square inch of land was worth its inch in gold. Even after a decade passed since God's Domain's official launch, the land of the Purple Sun Mansion would still be worth more than 10 billion credits. Although 1 billion credits was indeed an astronomical sum, it was truly not worth 10% of Zero Wing's shares. Even 1% was an overestimation, not to mention 10%. Master Black Flame, there has to be a limit even to jokes. By toying around with me like this, do you take me for someone easily bullied? Feng Xuanyang's expression suddenly changed, his tone turned cold as well. Vice Leader Feng, what I speak is the truth. If Vice Leader Feng feels wronged, then let's just forget about this matter entirely. Shi Feng shook his head and laughed. After this meeting, he too started thinking of looking for an investment partner. The falling flowers are yearning for love, but the heartless brook ripples on. If Shi Feng had rejected Feng Xuanyang's investment proposal from the very beginning, or had argued that Feng Xianyang was asking for too high a percentage of Zero Wing's shares, Feng Xianyang might still have accepted Shi Feng's answer with a smile. This was the atrocity of the truth, hence people would often prefer to hear a lie than the truth. The reason being, the truth was much crueler than a lie. If Aqua Rose were here right now, she would definitely scold Shifeng for speaking the truth. Soon after, Shifeng departed from the private room, leaving behind a thoroughly incensed Feng Xianyang. South Wolf, get in here. Feng Xianyang roared. South Wolf hurriedly entered the private room asking, Young Master Feng, why are you so angry? Did that brat Black Flame fail to appreciate your kindness? Tell Lone Tyrant that he can take action immediately. I don't wish to see the guild called Zero Wing in White River City anymore. Feng Xianyang no longer had his elegant appearance from before. Instead, he revealed his sinister nature, saying, since he isn't willing to cooperate with Underworld, then we will just remove him, one way or another. White River City does not need a guild that Underworld cannot control. Yes, I'll notify Lone Tyrant immediately, South Wolf said with excitement as he licked his lips. After Shifeng departed from the high-class bar, he immediately headed towards the teleportation hall. Spending 32 silver coins, he quickly arrived at Starmoon City, Starmoon Kingdom's most affluent city. Compared to White River City, the competition at Starmoon City was much more intense. Just the number of first-rate guilds present in the city already surpassed 5. The second and third-rate guilds were even more numerous. Meanwhile, the player population at Starmoon City was over 3 million. Such a number could easily match the total number of players in White River City and its neighboring 7 cities. One could say that Starmoon City was a location that every guild needed to compete for in the future. After all, it was a super city that would be able to contain over 10 million players in the future. Meanwhile, the resources available in the surroundings of Starmoon City were even more abundant. There were plenty of high-level maps that were only a short distance away from the city. Obtaining Starmoon City would be the equivalent of occupying a fifth of the entire Starmoon Kingdom's resources. Chapter 284, Ghost Raider. As the capital city of Starmoon Kingdom, beneath the flourishing appearance of Starmoon City were piles and piles of pearly white bones. The moment Shifeng arrived at the city, he could already sniff out the strong smell of blood. When Shifeng walked the bustling streets of Starmoon City, none of the players he saw belonged to small and unknown guilds. Instead, all the guild players he saw belonged to third-rate guilds or above. As for the unrated guilds, Shifeng could make a general guess as to where they had gone. They had definitely been completely annexed by these large guilds. Furthermore, the average level of players in Starmoon City was very high. In terms of equipment, the players of Starmoon City were also a notch higher than the players of White River City. Originally, it was a very rare sight to find average players possessing bronze equipment. At Starmoon City, however, it was not a rare sight at all. Shifeng had even seen some independent players who possessed equipment of mysterious iron rank and above. As for the players who wore a guild emblem on them, majority of their equipment were of mysterious iron rank. Some elite members of guilds were even fully geared with mysterious iron equipment. The standards of Starmoon City were clearly a lot higher than White River Cities. However, if these players were to be compared to Shifeng, they would still be miles and miles behind. When Shifeng arrived in Starmoon City, he had removed his disguise of Black Flame. Instead, he had chosen to use his original appearance of Yi Feng to move around the city. Hence, he did not choose to hide the equipment he had on him right now. Although Shifeng had already turned off the innate glowing effect that dark gold equipment possessed, he was unable to do anything about the originally dashing appearance of the item itself. There was also the 2 weapons at his waist, the Abyssal Blade and the Demon Bane, whose quality could not be discerned through sight alone. Overall, Shifeng's equipment had caused all the players who walked past him to cast sidelong glances at him. Shifeng was just like a famous celebrity as he strolled along the streets of Starmoon City. It was impossible for him to keep a low profile even if he wanted to. However, Shifeng paid no attention to the stares he was receiving, focusing only on the task at hand. After arriving at Starmoon City, a new city, Shifeng first made a trip to the city's auction house by force of habit. He intended to gauge the market conditions of this entire city. As the capital city, Starmoon City was geographically located in the central region of Starmoon Kingdom. Hence, whether it was the northern, southern, western or eastern region, all trade would pass through this place. In the past, during the peak of Starmoon Kingdom, Starmoon City controlled a full quarter of Starmoon Kingdom's trade volume. One could simply imagine how large the trade volume at Star Moon City was. If one could dominate Star Moon City, the daily profits one could rake in would be astronomical. In comparison, the Starstreak trading firm's daily profit of 1,600 to 1,700 gold coins was merely a trifling sum. With such a large trade volume available, it would be a lie to say that Shifeng did not have aspirations towards it. Unfortunately, Zero Wing had just recently set out on its journey. It would still be a long time before he could attempt to get a share of the pie known as Star Moon City. Today, Shifeng was simply here to lay the groundwork for his eventual entry into Star Moon City's market in the future. Star Moon City's auction house was also the largest auction house in Star Moon Kingdom. When players registered an item here, the item would also be available for the players in the surrounding tens of cities to purchase. It was much more amazing than the White River City auction house. Moreover, when players from another country wished to visit Star Moon Kingdom, or when players from the kingdom itself wished to head to another country, they would be required to make a transit through Star Moon City, as it was the capital city of the kingdom. This situation also led to players from other countries selling their wares at the Star Moon auction house. Hence, there was a very large variety of items available at the Star Moon auction house, and no other auction house in Star Moon Kingdom could ever dream of being its equal. This was also one of the reasons why many players would willingly come here to purchase or sell their items. The inside of the auction house was filled with a sea of players. After entering the building, Shifeng quickly looked for a quiet corner and sat down. He then called out the auction house interface, quietly browsing through its contents. "Brother Blade, look at that person's amazing equipment. Although my eagle eye skill allows me to identify any weapon or equipment that is fine gold rank or below, when I tried identifying that person's stuff, many of them returned as unidentifiable." A skinny ranger said excitedly as he drooled at Shifeng's equipment. "What? Unidentifiable? Don't tell me he's using dark gold equipment? Imperial Thunder, did something go wrong with your skill? Let alone a player from an unknown guild, even the guild leaders of Ouroboros and the Star Alliance wouldn't be able to possess so many dark gold equipment," the robust-looking berserker named Lifeless Blade argued, laughing. "Brother Blade, you should know that this identification skill of mine is an advanced skill that I obtained only after completing a unique quest. When had it ever gone wrong before?" The ranger named Imperial Thunder replied earnestly. Lifeless Blade nodded, his expression turning serious. He then looked toward Shifeng, who currently sat on a stone chair, noticing that he was actually unfamiliar with this person. Yifeng. He isn't an expert of Star Moon City. He should have come from some other city. After Lifeless Blade used an identification skill on Shifeng, he immediately knew that Shifeng was not a player belonging to Star Moon City. Lifeless Blade could be considered a somewhat famous person in Star Moon Kingdom. He had met many players before, and he had also met majority of the experts that could be found in the city. As for the experts he had yet to meet, he knew what they were called at the very least. Even so, he had never heard of an expert called Yifeng before. And yet, I seem to recall hearing this name Yifeng from somewhere. Lifeless Blade drifted into deep thought. I recall seeing this name on the official forums before. I wonder if I can still find it now. Thinking so, Lifeless Blade opened the official forums and started searching for information relating to a player called Yifeng. At this moment, Imperial Thunder used eagle eyes on the guild emblem hanging on Shifeng's chest. Instantly, a shocked expression surfaced on his face. Yet, immediately after, that shock turned into great excitement. "Imperial Thunder, what happened to you?" Lifeless Blade asked curiously. It was his first time seeing Imperial Thunder produce such an expression. In the past, Imperial Thunder did not react with such intensity even when he saw a Lord-ranked field boss. "Brother Blade, he's a member of Zero Wing," Imperial Thunder said excitedly. "Zero Wing? Why would they be here?" Lifeless Blade asked curiously. Nobody in Star Moon Kingdom had not heard of Zero Wing at this point. After all, it was the first guild in Star Moon Kingdom to possess its own guild residence. Moreover, there were plenty of experts in its midst. Even the top-ranking player in Star Moon Kingdom was a member of Zero Wing. Not only was this guild extremely mysterious, it also had Star Moon Kingdom's chief forger providing them with equipment. Countless players wished to join Zero Wing. Unfortunately, the guild was only recruiting members in White River City. Unless players from other cities migrated there, they would have no chance of joining it at all. At this moment, Lifeless Blade had also found some information relating to Yifeng on the forums. Aside from finding out that Yi Feng was the author of the White River City Guidebook, Lifeless Blade had also found some video recordings of Yi Feng's battles. Of them, the video showing Yi Feng's one-man battle against hundreds of Martial Union members was still ranked within the top 30 most viewed videos. The video had even been titled God-Rank Swordsman's Instructional Video. So he is that God-ranked expert Yi Feng. Lifeless Blade felt greatly surprised at this moment. He never imagined he would get the chance to meet such a great expert. While Lifeless Blade and Imperial Thunder were watching Shi Feng, with his extraordinary 5 senses, had long since noticed his 2 observers. The interest these 2 players emitted was very strong. In addition, the fervor in their gazes made it hard for Shi Feng not to notice them, even if he wasn't trying. And here I was, wondering who was spying on me. It turned out that it was Lifeless Blade and Imperial Thunder. Shi Feng glanced at his 2 admirers, sending a faint smile at them. Shi Feng had been looking forward to meeting these 2 famous players for a long time now. Before they had even started playing God's Domain, they were already a relatively famous independent party. In the gaming world they had even been called the Sharp Arrow Party. After they entered God's Domain, they shone even more than before. In the past, the team they had formed managed to successfully raid plenty of team dungeons that even the main force of first-rate guilds were helpless against. Meanwhile, the team leader, Lifeless Blade, had also been nicknamed the Ghost Raider. Brother Blade, such a chance won't fall into our laps a second time. Why don't we go get acquainted with him? Who knows, we might even become friends, Imperial Thunder suggested to Lifeless Blade. Chapter 285 Market Research. Imperial Thunder's suggestion sent Lifeless Blade into a light contemplation. Soon after, Lifeless Blade replied with a nod. As the saying went, another friend is another opportunity. If one wished to succeed in a game, an extensive network of friends was necessary. It was especially true when it came to friends who were experts. If we are going to hastily approach and interrupt him like this, we need to be careful with our words when we speak. After all, every expert has their own unique personality. Some might be cheerful, some might be indifferent, and some might be arrogant. It would be counterproductive if we happened to accidentally provoke him, Lifeless Blade whispered. Ah, of course I know about this point. Imperial Thunder laughed. You do, huh? Lifeless Blade rolled his eyes at Imperial Thunder. He then continued, do you still remember how you managed to provoke Yuan Fei, one of the top 10 rookies of the gaming world, whom we met last time? That was his fault for going overboard. He actually tried to roll for every equipment we got from that boss. Imperial Thunder still held a grudge against the player called Yuan Fei. When they had discovered a Lord-ranked field boss before, they had kindly sent Yuan Fei an invite to raid the boss together. After the boss died, the loot the boss dropped was distributed using the dice rolling system, as more than a dozen players had participated in the raid. It was also logical that every team member would only roll for the items they needed. Yet, contrary to custom, Yuan Fei had rolled for every single item the boss dropped. Yuan Fei's actions clearly stated that if he could not use it, then he could still sell it. You could have just spoken up about the matter. At worst, we could have just stopped contacting him. There was no need for us to become enemies. Yet, you chose to pick a fight with him without even trying to talk things out. That's not how you make friends, that's how you make enemies. Yuan Fei is still holding a grudge against us even until now. Lifeless Blade felt speechless when he recalled the incident back then. Yuan Fei was one of this year's top 10 rookies of the virtual gaming world, and the Star Alliance had even offered him an annual salary of 2 million credits in order to recruit him. Meanwhile, just because their team had provoked that petty-minded Yuan Fei, they had received plenty of oppression from the Star Alliance, making it hard for them to mingle in Star Moon City. If not for the fact that Lifeless Blade was acquainted with the guild leader of the Star Alliance, this matter would never have been settled, and their team would have been forced out of Star Moon City long ago. I understand. I won't repeat the same mistakes, Imperial Thunder said in a soft tone. In fact, he too recognized the mistake he made in the past. However, it was not easy for him to fix his short temper. As the two of them quietly conversed while they made their way towards Shi Feng had already grasped the general market trend in Star Moon City. Overall, the items sold here were cheaper than White River City. In White River City, a stack of hard stones could be sold for 10 silver coins. At this place, however, each stack was being sold for only 9 silver coins. The same went for whetstones. In White River City, Each stack of whetstones could be sold for 35 silver coins, while at this place, it was being sold for only 32 silver coins. Only advanced whetstones were sold at the same price in both cities, whereby each stack went for 1 gold coin. On the other hand, mysterious iron-ranked weapons and equipment sold here were at least 10% to 20% more expensive than the ones sold at White River City. As for secret silver-ranked weapons and equipment, those were sold at prices 30% to 40% higher. Sure enough, with more players around, the resources available is also greater in volume. Even though mysterious iron equipment is such a rare commodity in White River City, here in Star Moon City, these items seem to be available in abundance. There is someone actually selling secret silver equipment as well. As expected of the capital city, the number of experts here is much higher than other cities. Just by looking at the items being sold at the auction house, Shifeng could clearly feel the intensity of the competition at Star Moon City, with higher quality equipment in greater demand. It was also precisely this fierce competition that resulted in more experts being produced here. In order to survive in this city, one had to rack their brains and constantly think of ways to improve themselves, gradually climbing up the ranks of this prosperous city. Otherwise, what other explanation would there be for a precious secret silver equipment to appear at the auction house? It was simply impossible for guilds to sell any weapons or equipment that were of mysterious iron rank or better. After all, these items were strategic material for a guild. At most, they would sell the equipment produced by their own forgers. However, where would they find a forger who was capable of producing secret silver equipment? Even Shifeng, who possessed plenty of support items, could not easily produce them. It went without saying that other forgers should only be able to produce bronze equipment, or at best, mysterious iron equipment at this stage of the game. Hence, the secret silver-ranked weapons and equipment being sold at the auction house were definitely the offerings of independent teams. Meanwhile, their purpose in selling was simply to bolster their team's strength and obtain the funds necessary to cover their expenses. The number of independent teams that could obtain secret silver-ranked weapons and equipment at White River City could definitely be counted using one's fingers. As far as Shifeng knew, the only team capable of such a feat was the Holy Grail Knights that he had met by coincidence last time. On the other hand, there were a number of such independent teams in Star Moon City. One could just imagine the difference between the two cities. If I am going to try to enter Star Moon City's market, it seems that selling high-end equipment would be the most effective way to do so. At this moment, the fine gold-ranked Dragonscale set equipment popped up in Shifeng's mind. He felt that it might not be a bad idea to rely on the Dragonscale set equipment to break into Star Moon City's market. However, his current forging standards were still too low. Cream Coco was also only an advanced forging apprentice right now. She was still in the midst of striving to get promoted into a true forger. Moreover, another condition needed to be met if Shifeng wished to enter Star Moon City's market. Currently, Shifeng's guild was based only in White River City. If he were to establish a branch guild at Star Moon City at this period of time, that branch guild would immediately be annihilated by the many large guilds of Star Moon City. Hence, what Shifeng needed right now to enter Star Moon City's market was a shop to do business with. However, not to mention a shop, even if Shifeng wished to set up a stall, he first needed to become a minor noble of Star Moon City. As for establishing a shop, at the very least, he needed to become a baron before he could do so. As expected, if I don't deal with this shop issue, I won't have any way of entering Star Moon City's market at all. After all, the auction house's 15% processing fee was simply too expensive. More importantly, placing items at the auction house was something only independent teams or players would do. If one wished to have any sort of development and earn large sums of money and fame, a shop of their own was essential. Hello there, friend. I am called Lifeless Blade. Seeing that you have come to the auction house, I'm guessing that you are here to sell some equipment, right? I am somewhat well known in Star Moon City, and I have plenty of sales channels. If you wish to sell your equipment at a good price and its attributes are good, I can lend you a hand with selling them, Lifeless Blade said as he walked over, a smile on his face. Selling equipment? Shifeng took a look at his own getup, discovering that the weapons and equipment he had on him were far better than what anyone else present inside the auction house had. From an observer's point of view, he definitely would not have any demands for the items sold at the auction house. In which case, the possibility of him coming to the auction house to sell some of his unwanted equipment was very high. Chapter 286, The Eternal Throne. Shi Feng had not expected Lifeless Blade to be such a forthright person. Although Lifeless Blade had only taken out an ordinary-looking silver ring, Shi Feng knew exactly how precious this item was. The reason being, not only had he seen this ring in the past, he had even owned one before. The ring was a space ring, it was a storage item. One could not judge it simply based on its mysterious iron rank. The space ring could store up to 200 slots of items, it was a very significant amount. It also did not impart any additional weight to the user, regardless of the number of items stored in it. However, this was still not the most important point about this ring. Instead, the space ring excelled the most when used during battle. Although it did not have many uses in a normal battle, when used in a fight between experts, a battlefield, or a boss battle, it could bring about game-changing effects. For example, if players wished to use magic scrolls or support items during a battle, they needed to first place their hands into their bags and search for their items before pulling those out. This entire process would waste much time. However, it was a different story if players possessed the space ring. With a simple thought, the item specified would instantly appear within the player's hands. The space ring was much more convenient than a bag. In reply to Lifeless Blade's offer, however, Shi Feng shook his head and said, "This item is too valuable. I cannot accept it. Brother Yi Feng, I am a man who never takes advantage of his friends. I'll feel extremely guilty if you don't accept it. Moreover, this ring is merely a storage item. It's not particularly valuable, so please accept it," Lifeless Blade said. "Well, how about this? I have a favor to ask of Brother Blade. I wonder how many reputation points does Brother Blade have at Starmoon City right now?" Shi Feng whispered, sighing. Lifeless Blade grew confused at Shi Feng's question, failing to understand why Shi Feng would ask him such a thing. However, he still chose to answer honestly. "I'm only 30 points away from becoming a minor noble of Starmoon City. As the capital city of Starmoon Kingdom, the reputation points of Starmoon City was the most difficult to earn out of all the cities in the kingdom. Even if Lifeless Blade and his team were amazing, they were still a distance away from becoming nobles of the city." 30 points? Shi Feng sank into deep contemplation. He thought to himself, that's not a lot, I guess. If he completes those several quests, he should be able to get those points. "Must your favor require a noble to accomplish, Brother Yi Feng?" Lifeless Blade asked. "Yeah." Shi Feng nodded. "Only by becoming a noble could one purchase a stall in Starmoon City. Also, exchanging of stalls could only be conducted between nobles of Starmoon City, in order to prevent players from taking advantage of any loopholes." However, Shi Feng was a demon hunter. No matter where he went, he would still be treated like a noble. Hence, after Lifeless Blade purchased the stall, there would be no problems if he simply transferred ownership of the stall to Shi Feng. In this way, Shi Feng would have a stall in Starmoon City to officially sell his items. Originally, Shi Feng had thought to complete a few quests in Starmoon City to increase his reputation here. However, it would not be easy to obtain 100 Starmoon City reputation points. He needed to invest plenty of time to do so. Meanwhile, Lifeless Blade had a trustworthy character, and it would be much faster to earn just 30 reputation points than to earn 100 reputation points. At first, Lifeless Blade felt ashamed for being unable to be of any help to Shi Feng. However, Shi Feng's next remark immediately sent him into a daze. "I know a few high-level quests that can increase reputation points. After Brother Blade completes them, you should be able to become a noble of Starmoon City." After saying so, Shi Feng proceeded to list out the few quests he had in mind to Lifeless Blade, withholding nothing at all. "This shouldn't be a good idea, right?" Lifeless Blade was nearly left speechless. Originally, he had fully intended to help Shi Feng. In the end, however, he had been the one to receive help from Shi Feng instead. Currently, the many guilds in Starmoon City were desperately searching for quests that could increase one's reputation, holding back nothing to do so. However, even when they offered a huge reward for any related information, they still had no luck in finding any. Yet, Shi Feng had just casually revealed to him 4 high-level quests that rewarded reputation points, his casual remarks making it seem as if these quests were plain cabbages that could be found anywhere. "Is the difficulty of these quests too hard for you to manage?" Shi Feng suddenly came to a realization when he saw Lifeless Blade's troubled expression. "I still know a few quests that reward reputation. However, as their difficulty is much lower, the reputation points rewarded is similarly low. You'll have to complete at least 7 or 8 of them in order to accumulate 30 points. Lifeless Blade's mind was an utter mess now. He even started to suspect Shifeng was a GM, to actually know of so many reputation quests in Star Moon City. However, Lifeless Blade quickly dispelled this notion from his mind. After all, God's domain was controlled by the main God system. Nobody else was allowed to interfere with the game. Hence, the quests in the game were auto-generated by the system, and nobody should know about them in advance. Of course, if there was an exception to this point, then that would be the extremely mysterious beta testers. However, after God's domain was officially released, many settings and quests in the game were changed. In theory, the quests that were originally present during the beta test should no longer exist. Thinking up to this point, Lifeless Blade was thoroughly confused by Shifeng's identity. Just how was he able to know so many things? Are you wondering why I know so much? Naturally, Shifeng could discern Lifeless Blade's doubts. Ah. Lifeless Blade silently nodded his head, making no attempt to hide his thoughts. It's because I am a reincarnated person. I returned to this time from 10 years into the future, hence I know about all these quests, Shifeng said in full honesty. Brother Yifeng sure knows how to joke. Lifeless Blade abruptly burst into laughter. I'll complete these quests as quickly as possible. After I've managed to become a noble, I'll immediately notify Brother Yifeng. Lifeless Blade knew full well that everyone had their own secrets. Meanwhile, information on reputation quests would definitely be categorized as a top secret by guilds. Shifeng's willingness to reveal such precious information to him showed how much trust Shifeng placed in him. If Lifeless Blade still tried to probe deeper into the matter, then he would simply be too insensible. I'm telling the truth, Shifeng laughed bitterly. I know. Lifeless Blade nodded his head repeatedly, the smile on his face seemingly saying, I understand. Shifeng was left completely speechless. Although he had long since grown familiar with such a behavior, he still could not help but feel helpless every time he was faced with it. Why wouldn't anybody believe him even though he was telling the truth? Why must the world make an honest man like him tell a lie before somebody was willing to believe him? Shifeng was no longer able to make sense of this world. Soon after, Lifeless Blade added Shifeng as a friend before hurrying off to complete the quests. Meanwhile, thanks to Lifeless Blade, Shifeng now had a better understanding of Star Moon City's situation. After Lifeless Blade's departure, Shifeng hailed a horse carriage and headed to the War God's Temple of Star Moon City. He intended to continue carrying out his legendary ranked main storyline quest. The War God's Temple of Star Moon City was built beside the palace. From the outside, the building looked like a magnificent and majestic pyramid, and at the summit of this pyramid was a house-sized sunstone, which exuded a divine light. Be it day or night, this sunstone would shine brilliantly on the entire War God's Temple, and one couldn't help but admire this dazzling construction when seeing it. As the main branch of the War God's Temple, it had Tier 3 NPCs roaming around outside the temple itself, and even a Tier 5 Shadow Saint would not be able to penetrate the tight security here. Although this was not Shifeng's first time visiting this War God's Temple, it was still his first time coming to the 9th floor of the temple. The Eternal Throne. Just the NPC guiding Shifeng to this place was already a Tier 4 Glory Knight. In other cities, such an NPC would be an overlord-like existence that could cause others to tremble in fear. However, in this place this NPC simply amounted to a guide. After entering the Eternal Throne, Shifeng immediately discovered one purple throne and 9 golden thrones suspended in the center of the room. On the sides were 50 silver thrones. Aside from the empty purple throne, every other throne was occupied by a person. Moreover, these people were all apex powerhouses of God's domain. A single step of theirs could send tremors throughout the entire continent. However, among all these people only one of them had a real body, the others were simply phantoms. Sitting in their thrones, these powerhouses quietly observed Shifeng. Meanwhile, as the recipient of these gazes, Shifeng could not help but feel that his life was no longer in his hands. His body felt incomparably heavy under these stares, and his back was also already drenched in sweat. This was the imposing aura of a true apex powerhouse. It was not something Tier 4 classes could ever hope of equaling. As expected of one of God's domain's strongest powers. To think they actually have so many apex powerhouses in their midst. Shifeng was racked with emotion right now. Although he had played God's domain for over a decade, this was the first time he personally witnessed the War God's Temple's true strength. What an interesting young man. However, I don't believe a little guy like you can accomplish that quest. This is something that involves the fate of the entire continent, after all. Since it is so, let us give this little guy a test. If he passes it, I believe that nobody here would have any other objections, right? A test? This lady likes it. Let's go with that. If he passes the test, I'll throw in my vote of support. If he fails, well, he'll already be dead at that point, so no punishment will be necessary. How are we going to test him? Obviously, we are going to activate the 12 trials. Ah, the 12 trials. I have only heard of it before and only treated it as a legend. The last time it was activated was more than 900 years ago. I didn't expect that I would be so lucky as to witness it being activated in my lifetime. I must really thank you, little guy. I do hope you can last a few rounds though. Let this old man here widen my horizons. You're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.